Board of Education to order. We will begin with the roll call, please, Janet.
Kevin Boyles.
Here.
Michelle Brecken.
Here.
DJ Donlinger.
Here.
Randy Heidman.
Here.
Sarah Spear.
Here.
John Ward. 5 of the 6 present.
Thank you. And now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, as we move along to the approval of the agenda as amended for tonight, board members, just a couple of quick changes to the agenda. Under the consent calendar, we have a new field trip request in there to approve. Under new business, on the approval of the reading of MSBA Policy 720, actually a second reading. I think, what do we have that listed as first reading? In the original draft of the agenda. And why was I thinking there was a third thing?
I think that was it.
Okay, great. So those are the only changes to the published agenda from last week.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Heidman to approve the amended agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, let's leap right in with the solistic stylings of Marcy Lord
Yes, it's very
with our
exciting.
public hearing for truth and taxation for 2023 payable 2024 tax levy.
Yes. Good evening. This presentation is very broad. If you guys have questions as I go through, please let me know. So the first slide is just going through what the state law requirements are. Tonight's agenda basically covers all of those requirements for meeting within the time frame. We do have a time for public comment, and then we will adopt the final levy after the public comment. Also being presented will be the current year budget and then the proposed tax levy. So the agenda is we'll go through some of the background information, the district's budget, and then the tax levy, and then we'll allow for those public comments. So the Minnesota legislature sets funding for Minnesota public schools. I'm sure you all were aware of that, but that is something that we do like to point out. It's not something that Brainerd Public Schools sets, it's set by the legislature. So they set formulas which determine our revenue. The formula allowance right now for 23-24 is $7,138, and it's going up to $7,281 in 24-25. The state also sets the tax policy and then the maximum authority that we can levy. I should touch briefly, the state also allows school boards to submit referendums for operating and capital needs, which require voter approval. The Gen Ed formula lags behind inflation, so we did see a 4% and 2% increase in 23-24 and 24-25. If we had kept up with inflation over the years, we would actually need another increase of $1,356. And then this graph just depicts that difference. So the red or orange dotted line is how the formula has been adjusted throughout the past years. And then the blue line is if it had been adjusted for inflation, what the rate would be. So quite a bit of difference there. They've tried to make adjustments as we've gone throughout, but it is still behind. So this one, there's underfunding in special ed, and you've heard me say this at some of you have heard me say this at previous presentations. We did get cross-subsidy aid this last legislative round. It went from 5.1 million, we did get an additional 2.7 million to help with that 5.1 million cross-subsidy. But we still are underfunded. So the projections are that we would be underfunded by 408 million even at the end of fiscal year 27 with what the state allocated us. Just an FYI on that. Changes in the tax levy does not determine a change in the budget. There are a number of factors in there, so the changes in the levy can be due to those formulas. It can be due to changes by the funds, and it could also be changes due to an increase, excuse me, to levies and related fund balance. So there's multiple factors in there. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're gonna have a change in the budget, though. So differences in levy cycles, cities and counties, they're currently levying for their next fiscal year. They're January 1, they're levying for 2024. We are actually a year behind, so what we're levying for is for 24-25. It's kind of confusing, but that's how it works for school districts. And the budget that we are levying for would be adopted in June of 2024. So the budget that we're gonna share with you tonight is actually the 23-24 budget. It has no impact on the levy. That would have been last year's presentation, but we do have to present it. That's one of the requirements of the statute. And it's broken out by funds: general, food service, community service, building construction, debt service, internal service, OPEB trust, and OPEB debt service. So the blue column is our current 23-24 budget. It's broken out by revenues and expenditures, and then the estimated fund balance at the end of the year. And then the gray column is how we ended the year for 22-23 actuals. Fund balances in total are projected to decrease compared to last year, with the largest changes in general, construction, and debt service funds. So this is a graph of our revenues and transfers in for 23-24. You can see the majority of our revenues are in the general fund. The levy accounts for 22.2% of all of our revenues budgeted in 23-24. And the 4.51% increase that's being presented tonight represents a 1% of all our revenues budgeted. So it's very small percent. This is the general fund revenue, specifically broken out by state, federal, local, and other. With this levy, there would be a slight decrease in the local for 24-25, because in the general fund, it's actually going down, and I'll show that in a following slide. So this is general fund expenditures by object. You can see the bulk of our expenses, 80.1% are salary and benefits. Capital dropped from 5% to 2% compared to last year, which is mainly due to Blueprint 181. As you know, we're winding down on that project. And then this is general fund expenditures by program. So the state, we report data to the state that's broken out by the general categories. 84.1% of that is instructional and support services. So a large chunk of that. On the upcoming slides, we'll talk about the determination of the levy, comparing 23-24, reasons for changes in tax levy, and then the impact on taxpayers. So the property tax background, there's various jurisdictions when you get your tax statement. There's going to be city, county, school district. Each taxing jurisdiction sets their own levy, and then the taxes are collected by the county and remitted to jurisdictions. And then there's a visual of what the tax statement normally looks like that you get mailed mid-November normally, and it compares last year to this year, and also has on there that it's broken out by jurisdictions and then when their public meeting is. So the maximums for school districts are set by state law, and then also there's the option, as previously mentioned, to do referendums which require voter approval. The property tax process we'll talk about in this next slide. There's 6 steps. Step 1, the county sends out valuation notices. That's normally in the spring. And the only step that the school board plays into is that step 5. So in September, You guys approved a proposed levy, and then we'll do the public hearing tonight and adopt the final levy tonight as well. And then after that, the county auditor will send out the final statements for remittance. So this is the district-specific tax levy timeline. So September 8th, MDE shared a draft levy limit. The 11th, the school board approved that proposed levy at the maximum. So if there were any changes made until September 30th, those would be in that. And then tonight will be the public hearing and proposed levy. The proposed was set at 3.6%. The change is due to the change in calculations, which can be from MDE finding errors in their maximums, schools, that kind of thing. So that's why there's a change. And this is just a summary of, so we're looking at a 4.5% increase, and then the changes by levy category I will be putting it or describing in the following slides. So this is a summary of the levy by fund. The general fund is going to be going down about 0.9%. Community service fund is going to be down 1.3%, and then the debt service fund is going to be down 8%. And the primary increase in the debt service fund is due to issuing bonds related to Blueprint 181. So in the general fund, there was an increase in the local optional revenue. That's based on the property tax values. So as the property tax values go up, we will see an increase in that revenue. And then on the general fund as well, LTFM, or long-term facilities maintenance, is going down. It's offsetting the increase we have for debt service. So we issued debt to help cover our long-term facility maintenance needs. And that is why it's less in the general fund and increasing in the debt service fund. So factors impacting the individual's taxpayers' school taxes, changes in property value. There could be a change in the total value in the district. A lot of times people will assume that because their taxes are going up so tonight I'm presenting 4.51%. My taxes are going up 8%. Why is there a difference? It's generally because their property tax value is going up, not because of, we're levying more than what we said. So I encourage people generally to look at that market value to see if there's a change there, if they question that. So this is just kind of a visual for those that like visuals. The levy amount does not change even though a taxpayer's piece of the pie may change with market value changes. So higher market value increase, they're going to pay a bigger piece of the pie. If they have a lower market value, then they're going to pay a smaller slice. And here's another example of how that plays out. So if two properties are valued at $100,000, they each pay $250 for a $500 levy. Well, the orange house's value goes up 10%. The blue house's value goes up 25%. The school district's still collecting $500. We're not collecting any more revenue. The orange house is going to pay less, and the blue house is going to end up paying more. The following slides are examples of taxes with no change, and then a 51.6% increase in property values. And the property values, this is broken out by category. So there's residential, commercial, ag, homestead. And you can see on there that the estimated taxes payable if there were no change in values would actually be going down. But as you know, we do have, generally every year, there's a change in market value. And these amounts on the examples are what was used when we did Blueprint 181. So that 156,200 residential homestead property is the value used when we were presenting throughout the district on the Blueprint 181. So if no changes in property value, the taxes would have went down for both of these examples. And then same with the ag homestead and the seasonal rec. This is based on a 51.6% cumulative change. This is more likely what some homeowners or businesses have seen. You can see that's the change on the value of those homes. As I mentioned, you can go out for referendum, and this is like districts that we generally compare ourselves to. So Bemidji, Moorhead, Alec, they have similar demographics. They have operating referendums that range from $180 to almost $1,000. St. Cloud does not have an operating referendum, but they do have alternative facilities funding, which is another way to get funds for their buildings. So just want to note that on that slide. And then the state property tax refunds and deferrals. This is just available for homesteads and senior citizens. It's another thing that they can file for. So the next steps would be the board accepts public comments on the proposed levy and then certifies the 2024 property tax levy. Are there any questions?
Getting off easy.
Don't do that.
I guess hearing no further questions for Marcy, then I would invite any members of the public that have public comment specific to the tax levy being discussed in this portion of the meeting. You're welcome to come forward at this point. Okay, in which case then I'm prepared to accept a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the resolution for the final tax levy for the 2023 taxes payable in 2024 as presented by Marcy. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I believe this is a roll call vote. Yes, Janet?
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
EJ Dunlear,
Yes.
Randy Heidman,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
Kevin Boyles,
Yes.
all present in favor.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. And then we move on from that portion of the meeting and we'll move on to recognitions. I believe, Dr. Hahn, you've got some folks lined up to.
Yes, Harrison, the names of our students of the month are listed. Principal Conrad unfortunately is home ill this evening, so we'll take note of those names. Depending on time, I believe Principal Stelmach, here she comes.
Hi, good evening. I have student of the trimester names to announce for Baxter Elementary School. We do a theme at Baxter, and our theme this year is Together We Grow. Trimester 1, we were putting down roots. So the following students demonstrated above and beyond in that category. From the 4th grade, Elsie Brecken, Finley Duffney, David Exton, Millie Franzen, Garrett Gunderson, Luna Milady, Ellie McAllister, Max Terwilliger, and Josie Zahar. From 3rd grade, Annabelle Anderson, LJ Costner-Johnson, Aria Fugate, Devin Hansen, Connor Keepers, Lennox Miller, McKenna Orline, Logan Summers, Jackson Watashik. From 2nd grade, Isabel Bedard, Isla Khan, Brenna Diebel, Axel Peterson, Rosie Sandusky, Autumn Schaffhauser, Reed Sharp. 1st grade, Harvey Hall, Molly Hansen, Tucker Holton, Noah Kelm, Finnegan Keepers, Araya Madzima, Sydney McMillan, and Valoria Perrine. That looks like they were listed in there twice, so just scratch 1st grade repeated. And then kindergarten, Rivers Castleberg, Ren Freeman, Austin Lasher, Reese Mertens, Colton Meyer, Kendall Romans, Greta Swanson, and Liam Swartup. So each teacher, certified staff is allowed to choose just one, and then we do that 3 times a year at the end of each trimester. Thank you.
Thanks, Principal Stelmach, and I believe, I do not know if Principal Rusk. So we have a choir concert at BHS tonight, but we had our swimmers, had a wonderful showing at state. You can see our state participants, but we had some record breakers. Maya Tao just set a new school record in the 50 free. And I believe she also set we had a new school record in the 100 butterfly. And another new school record that was set 45 years ago in the 100 free, again by Maya Taugis. So some exciting finishes and lots of great representation at state.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right, then we'll move along to public input. So at this time, a member of the public can address the board. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to Superintendent Hahn. And the Board of Education and Superintendent will not converse with guests to address the topics discussed at this time. So with that said, Chris Wyman is first up. I know we have some people in the back room, so we may have a delay while people come up from
Chris is right
in there.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Chris Wyman. I'm a teacher at Baxter School. I teach 2nd grade, and I just would like to extend an open invitation to all of you to come into my classroom and see what a 2nd grade classroom is like. I will send you my contact information and would look forward to hearing from you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Next up, Tom Coet.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name's Tom Coet. I live up in Nisswa, Minnesota. I fish the same lake as Director John. So I was going to give him a little harassment tonight, but now I can't do that. This is my 3rd school board meeting in the last 4 months, and I want to share with you some concerns I have about what I've seen and heard. It seems that a considerable amount of time has been spent assessing the appropriateness of the books found in the school library. Now, based on a Brainerd Dispatch newspaper article I read, there was a unanimous approval from a 12-person evaluation panel on the book Empire of Storms. According to the Dispatch, the following are some comments by the reviewers, and I'll redact the names so we don't have to hear that. There were 4 passages in the book, redacted said, he felt were controversial, and he went on to say, I also hope that we collectively would have the wisdom to leave certain decisions to family structure, in that when it's ambiguous or gray, that we err on the side of the family's right to choose for itself what their children are exposed to. Second one, the sexual encounters depicted in Empire of Storms are loving and consensual and could help initiate conversations between students and their guardians and help the students grow and mature. Other committee members spoke of students' and parents' right to choose for themselves and their families. Redacted said he was uncomfortable reading the book and does not think the district needs to provide that kind of resource for students based on some of the scenes, especially because it is readily available in other places. Redacted stated the book was checked out 3 times since it was purchased in 2018. So my question is, what are we doing here? We spent a lot of time reviewing these books, and these are comments by those who approved the book being in the school library. In a real-world business environment, based on the arguments from both sides of this issue, it would be a no-brainer to pull the book. This is a protection I believe we owe families in our community. Now, in closing, at the October board meeting, we were presented with academic statistics ranking students with their grade level with Minnesota state averages. And we might all agree that there is room for improvement. I also understand that there are issues that might prevent kids from attending school on a regular basis. We can't solve all those issues, but we can focus like a laser beam on fundamentals such as reading, writing, and mathematics so that they have a better chance to succeed when they graduate. A better educated workforce would also help us compete in a challenging global market. I have a lot of other things I'd like to share with you, but I only have 3 minutes and my time's almost up. But I thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you, Tom. Jeff Wigg, please.
My name is Jeff Wigg.
and I'm a lifelong member of the Brainerd community. And I'm lucky enough to know most of you at this table personally. And I want to thank you for the service you're providing to our community's kids and to our future by taking the tremendous responsibility of leading our schools. Mr. Heidman, I don't think you and I have had the chance to meet, but I hope to have that opportunity soon. I'm especially grateful to each and every one of you because it feels to me like there's never been a tougher time to be an educational leader. Whether you're a staff member, you're a teacher, an administrator, or a board member, the forces that impact how you do your job are stronger and honestly feel more divisive than they've ever been. And one force that just seems like it accelerates faster and faster is change. Families, politics, and faith are all undergoing significant stresses. And technology puts vast amounts of both useful information and divisive and harmful disinformation right in the hands of any kid who owns a smartphone. The stuff of the web comes at kids unfiltered. And it seems to me like nobody in charge of the internet feels any responsibility for making sure kids get the guidance and the context to critically assess what they're seeing and reading. And that to me is why the schools have such an important role. Some kids are lucky. They have families or faith communities where they can ask hard questions and they can have thoughtful conversations with adults. But for many kids, school is the only place where they can read about different perspectives, they can read about different ways of life in a place that's safe and where caring adults are there to give them guidance and context. And that's why I urge you as a Board of Education to exercise extreme caution when it comes to calls to remove books and materials from our libraries and classrooms. I would much rather my child have the opportunity to learn about topics of controversy in the safety of the school, where access to controversial material is controlled, and there are teachers and librarians there to help them make meaning of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, and Superintendent Hahn for this opportunity to speak, and kudos for the work you do and the responsibility you've taken on for our kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Amy Aho, please.
I couldn't let you get away with not hearing from one ward tonight. Good evening. My name is Amy Aho, and I'm a speech-language pathologist at Garfield Elementary School. I work with students in kindergarten through 4th grade, and have worked in the Brainerd District for 23 years. I am also a Brainerd alumni, and I have 2 children who are also Brainerd alumni. Garfield Elementary has 2 speech-language pathologists, and between the 2 of us, we work with around 70 students who have been identified as having a communication disorder. In speech intervention, we work on a variety of skills, including but not limited to language, vocabulary, grammar, literacy, figurative language, following directions, articulation, stuttering, social skills, and speech intelligibility. I went into this profession to help students gain confidence in their communication skills and help them develop tools to increase their success in the regular education classroom, as well as outside of the school setting. I love my profession and I love my job. It brings me joy to work with students and to advocate for them. Unfortunately, this position, as well as special education teaching positions, comes with a heavy burden of paperwork. These paperwork demands have created an impossible workload for speech-language pathologists and special educators. In order to provide our students with the service time necessary to make progress toward their educational goals, we are forced to spend time during the evenings and weekends working on paperwork. This takes time away from our families and ourselves. These challenges create difficulty in maintaining a healthy work-life balance and often leave us feeling depleted and burned out. Workload needs to be addressed in our contract. This is one way Brainerd can attract and retain the quality professionals who work in the Brainerd School District. We need to ensure educators have the time they need in their daily schedules to complete their required paperwork, in addition to providing them time to plan quality lessons and deliver these lessons to our students. I invite you all to come to visit my classroom. I have a great job and fantastic students who I care deeply about. You are welcome to come in and see the hard work they do to help them achieve their communication goals. I also welcome you to reach out anytime. I have a really fun job, so I really encourage you to reach out to me. I know at times being a public servant can be a thankless job. I offer you a sincere thank you to all of you for serving on the board and advocating for our district, educators, employees, and the students in our district. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Next up is Tammy Sand Benson, please.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thank you also for what you do. My name is Tammy Sand Benson. I live in Baxter and had 2 boys graduate from BHS. I was also the librarian at Baxter Elementary from 2018 to 2023. Mirrors, windows, and doors. People, including children, should be able to see themselves and their reality in books. Mirrors. People, including children, should be able to see and learn about others in books, including people that are different from them. Windows. People, including children, should be able to venture out into new worlds, having some knowledge of what they are stepping into. Doors. Isn't the public school meant to teach? Schools have become a place where so much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic needs to be taught. Yes, it's very important, don't get me wrong, but whether you like it or not, more and more subjects need to be addressed. Life skills are just as important as the 3 R's. How to treat a friend or a not friend. How to control your body. How to exercise your body. How to think critically. Library books are a huge part of that learning. As an elementary librarian, I was with kids that had impulse issues. We'd read, "My mouth is a volcano." It drew attention to the issue not only for the kiddo that could not stop talking, but also helped kids that were troubled by this. I was with kids that had not learned or been taught manners. We'd read "Do Unto Otters," a book about manners. They wouldn't grasp all of it, but maybe 1 or 2 things. I was with kids from split families, blended families, foster families, black and brown families, families with 2 moms or 2 dads, kids from abusive families, kids that are questioning their gender identity. We must have books for all these children. I understand this doesn't sit well with everyone. Age appropriateness must be taken into consideration, but please remember, kids are not a one-size-fits-all. There are kids that are very sheltered and kids that have witnessed or experienced much more distressing reality. Maybe a book gives them an escape. Maybe a book makes them feel normal. Maybe a book helps them learn a skill. Taking that away is unfair. For those of you that want to protect books for our kids, access to books, you have to show up. Show up, speak up, take up oxygen. If the only thing our school board and administrators and teachers hear is "this book is inappropriate" or "my child can't read this book," they are left with no choice but to believe that is what the majority wants. I always told, oops.
Oh, thank you, Tammy.
Good place to stop.
Next up is Lisa Drees, please.
My name is Lisa Dreetz. I am a lifelong resident of this community and a product of the Brainerd school system. My children are also Brainerd alumni. I am a warrior and most definitely bleed blue. This is my 32nd year as a mathematics teacher in the Brainerd district. I have taught at various buildings over the years: Franklin Junior High, Brainerd High School, Washington Middle School, and Baxter Elementary. Currently, I teach 8th grade algebra at Forest View Middle School. I have been teaching without a contract for approximately 6 months. I feel defeated. I feel like I am no longer a priority and that my efforts in the classroom are no longer valued. Tonight, I am here to invite each of you into my classroom. It is an open invitation. Come at any time. No need to email or call in advance. The signage on my classroom windows read, "Come in. We are awesome." Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Misty Job, please.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to address the board today. My name is Misty Job. I am an educator of 20 years teaching English to middle and high school students in this district. I am also the parent of 2 alumni who each received an excellent education in Brainerd Public Schools. I am also the president of Education Minnesota Brainerd. The job I am doing today bears little resemblance to the one I accepted nearly 20 years ago. Most of the long list of acronyms that will be used throughout the evening did not exist when my career began. MTSS, ACOMP, TD&E, to name just a few. Each of these new initiatives have added responsibilities and requirements to my daily role, with no additional time added to the day to complete them. Student needs have also increased exponentially, with rates of behavior issues and mental and emotional health disorders that are unprecedented and just continue to grow. My concerns no longer begin with academic achievement, but the well-being of the human beings, both big and small, walking into our buildings every day. The impact on our teachers has been profound. Burnout, I fear, is becoming the norm, as people who genuinely love and care about their students are unable to meet their ever-growing needs without sacrificing their own time, mental and emotional well-being, and financial resources to do so. There are no easy answers or solutions to these issues, but reaching out to the educators who are in classrooms every day would be an excellent place to start, as decisions made in isolation from experience typically have little chance of success. The board has had many discussions about hiring and retaining quality teachers. Settling a fair contract that recognizes the profound demands of this profession is a beginning, followed by meeting with and listening with open ears and an open mind to those doing the important work of caring for and educating the wonderful students of our community. Teachers who feel heard and respected are the district's best resources for finding realistic solutions to the issues facing us. Like many of my colleagues tonight, I would like to invite you to join my classroom anytime you would like. I'm currently teaching at the Brainerd Learning Center in the alternative program, and I'm happy to welcome you to walk through those doors anytime that is convenient for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Beth Bastian, please.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Beth Bastian. I'm an educator of 32 years, with 25 of those years as a public servant for ISD 181 at Brainerd High School. In my 25 years here, I have served in both special education and regular education. I've served students with disabilities as a case manager. I've taught basic level social studies and a recognized social skills program for students with autism. I have served students in both regular and advanced placement American history, regular, online, and advanced placement government, advanced placement geography, sociology, and psychology. I've served as a professional learning community leader, a district trainer for new teachers, a peer coach, and am currently a curriculum leader. I'm now also working to facilitate a site team council meeting of teachers, counselors, administrative and support professionals who collectively work to address behavior, communication, procedure, and process issues in our site. I'm providing you with just a snapshot of my long resume so that you have an introduction into my work, my public service. To say that I take my vocation lightly is a heavy, heavy, heavy understatement. Please check with my husband and my family. Let me also share that I'm the parent of 2 recent graduates who, over the course of 13 years, benefited from the work of other public servants in the Brainerd school system that did not and do not take their job lightly, and I thank them as well as you for their service. The field of education has gone from chalkboards to overheads to computers to one-on-one devices to Google Classrooms to purposeful and creative online learning. The Teacher Toolbox of 2023 requires a mental, physical, technical, and emotional depth and breadth that was not present when I began my journey of public service. The classroom of 2023 and the teacher grit, determination, and resiliency to sustain it are not the same as even the classroom of 2019. We are in different times. As a collective staff, we live those different times daily. It's in this spirit that I am inviting school board members, as many of my fellow teachers, into my classroom to witness these times and the work that is being poured out into our students. Please feel free to contact me and set up an appointment to come and watch my classroom and work with me in my efforts to serve our students of the community every day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Beth. Rachel Cohen, please.
Good evening. Thanks for serving, and thanks for everyone behind me that are also serving and caring for kids. I'm going to just talk really quick about school policies as they relate to the appeal of the book challenge, Empire of Storms. So as you know, Policy 606 is the resource selection policy. Under the objectives, it says, strong effort will be made to provide resources that will support and enrich the curriculum. It also says strong effort will be made to place principle above personal opinion. Isn't it a principle to ensure the school is free of pornography and obscene materials? The policy goes on to say to select resources of the highest quality to assure a comprehensive collection. Then it finishes the objectives by saying few works are totally perfect and may contain one or more flaws, but that doesn't make them poor quality. That's what it says in the policy. But does it make them high quality? Apparently, you can still accept them if they're flawed and only use the good parts. That might work with curriculum, but not with a library book. When a student chooses to read a book, they don't skip the pages that are flawed or sensational. The school needs to stay focused on the highest quality, not flawed quality. Another policy is 504, student dress and appearance. Policy says in part, student clothing may not include the following. Clothing including words bearing a message that is lewd, vulgar, or obscene. Communicating a message that is racist, sexist, or otherwise derogatory. The intention of this policy is not to reduce the rights of the students. Such messages are acceptable as long as they are not lewd, vulgar, obscene, racist, etc. So the words taken from the book, Empire of Storms, if written on my t-shirt, would violate the dress code. Policy 504. And this book, if it was a movie, would not be allowed in school. I challenge you to be consistent. Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Doug Kern, please.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for addressing the two policies, or the book challenge and the policy you're going to be looking at tonight. Like she was just saying, what I see is that if you can't read something in public, like down at the state legislature, it shouldn't be in our schools. I was talking to a former congressman not too long ago, the congressman that we had here. And he said to me, we have to take the children. And I corrected him. I said, they're not your children. We have to remember whose children they are. We got to talk about I heard about the 4 R's. There's the 3 R's. The reading, writing, arithmetic, rubber should not be the 4th R. The children, they belong to the parents. And what I see in the community is that we all want our children to be educated. We all want them to have a good, solid education. And these people that work so hard with our kids, we want to back them up. We're not trying to tear down anything. We're trying to have our children have good quality education. I've heard it said that they can get this material anywhere. Well, it should be anywhere but in the schools. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And Shirley Yeager, please.
Good evening. Tonight, the school board is going to vote on the appeal of the ad hoc committee's decision to retain the book Empire of Storms. One of the criteria the committee used to make their decision is stated in the guidelines of Policy 606. It says to weigh the values and form opinions on the resource as a whole, rather than on passages or sections taken out of context. Well, I contend that doing that is actually impossible and goes against all known methods of rating. When you look at a movie, take James Bond, for example, you can talk about a car chase or a gun battle or maybe bombs exploding, and these are all parts of the story. They will cause the movie to be R-rated because of violence. Each of these things are separate incidences within the whole story. There will be times when the agent is just talking, and that's not violent, but it is a part of the whole story. And there will be moments when he meets a woman and they end up having sex. This, too, will cause the movie to be R-rated for sexual content. You can focus on any one of these scenes and talk about it, but that doesn't mean you are taking it out of context. They are just parts of the whole story. When we talk about the explicit sexual encounter in the book Empire of Storms, we are not taking it out of context. We are talking about a part of the total context. It's a piece of the whole story. You cannot isolate it and ignore it. Just like when you rate a movie, it's never the total movie that gives it the rating. The rating is based on the content, not as a whole, but whether it contains elements of violence, sex, nudity, or language. Empire of Storms contains descriptive sexual intercourse, both oral and vaginal. It's very descriptive, and it is woven into the story. It's there as a part of the whole. That makes it equivalent to being R-rated. The school doesn't allow R-rated material to be worn on clothing, and it doesn't allow R-rated movies to be shown in the classroom. So why would you consider keeping a book in the library that is equivalent to being R-rated? It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't support other school policies. So I challenge you tonight to be consistent. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. I believe that concludes our public comment for this evening. We will move on to the approval of the minutes from our November 13th board meeting, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Spear to approve the regular board meeting minutes from November 13th. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is the consent calendar. This is one of the amended agenda items. We have the fourth bullet down, field trip request. I believe it's from the Nordic ski team. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Otherwise, everything else is as it was in your board packets that were released last week. As to the policies 501, 502, and 526, we looked at these on the last consent calendar too, I believe. These are stock MSBA language. We didn't really have any red lines or changes to those, and what changes there were Director Murtha's around, driven by statute, where they were. So I don't believe there were any comments the last time we read these. So that's why we moved them to the consent agenda. Any questions about those? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you, Director Spear.
And I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, next we move up to presentation of the Center Plant Wrap Sale Update by Deanne Berry and Kathy Toussaint.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I am Kathy Toussaint. I've been involved in the plant sale, so I've been at the board many times, but some of you are new, so it's nice to meet you. It's time for us to start planning. Our sale is in May, and I know it's time because I've got the first catalog of the season. Our plant sale is sort of a community event, mainly because we get to use the greenhouse at the old high school farm, but also the little wild bird store gives us some Seeds and other businesses save boxes for us so that our shoppers have something to carry their plants in. And Brainerd Floral gives us plastic pots that they used to just recycle. And Crowing Powers Operation Roundup helps us out with expenses for other things that we have, like potting soil and so forth. We start planting our seeds in February at the center, and by mid-March, we're ready to move out to the greenhouse with the seedlings. Last year, we had 17 varieties of herbs, 15 of tomatoes, 8 of peppers, 15 cole crops, which is a term I never knew before, includes squashes, cucumbers, pumpkins, that sort of thing. And we plant flowers, lots of flowers, everything from alyssum to zinnia. And in addition to individual plants, we put together flower gardens, tomato and herb gardens, and many, many floral baskets.
Last year, one of our board members and also a plant crew person, Nick, came up with this idea. We called it the Coleus Project. Sounds like some underground spy ring, but we started Coleus. Some people had them in their homes and they were kind of unique, kind of different. If you're familiar with Coleus, it almost looks like a flower without being one. It's very beautiful and colorful and different varieties. So we picked maybe 4 or 5 and we did cuttings, and we had some big enough to use for prizes at a Christmas party, December. Our plant sale is the next May. We had coleus growing in the ends of hallways and cuttings growing at the greenhouse. By the time the plant sale came in May, we probably had over 200 different varieties, sold them at our plant sale, did beautiful garden baskets at the entrances of all of our buildings. Was a wonderful project. So it went so well. There now are mother plants at the ends of our hallways, and cuttings are being done. We had 14 we used for prizes at last Friday's Christmas party. So if you're a fan of coleus, I'm sure we'll have a couple hundred at this May's plant sale as well. So the Coleus project has continued. We're very thankful for the support we receive from you. And our intent, we always do kind of a wrap up, usually in August. And this year we were busy doing other things. I'm not certain what happened, but we felt it was good to give you a follow-up. And we're hoping to have use of the greenhouse once that is all filtered through your process again this year. But we really appreciate it. And when you're ready and we have a decision, we'll let you know. You can either come and see the baby classrooms that we have at the center when we start them under the grow lights, or when they're bigger and out at the greenhouse. We'd like to have you check out the process because it is pretty phenomenal. And I can be very proud of what they do because I don't have anything to do with it. My benefit is purchasing plants and seeing things grow in my own home because of it. It's a fabulous community project. So thank you all very much for what you do.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, we will move into our new business action items, and we will start with the approval of the second reading of MSBA Policy 631, Library Materials.
So based on the first reading, the information that was discussed at the board table, those adjustments have been made within the policy and are reflected in red. Once we made those adjustments, I sent it back to our policy committee, which is Director Boyles and Director Heidman. They had three additional suggestions. You will find those suggestions highlighted in yellow. I don't think the yellow highlight came through on this one.
We did on this one. On page 7, though, we actually did it backwards.
Did we do it backwards?
Yeah,
Okay.
we want the word decision to carry through instead of the word report.
Gotcha.
We had a decision in one sentence and report in the other, and
other?
we just wanted to make it consistent.
So we want report, not decision?
No, we want decision, not report. Right now, report's highlighted in yellow.
Okay, this one says decision. So this one may not. You have the highlighted changes. I have the
Guess
final.
we're not all singing off the same hymnal
Nope, I
here.
gotta go back to this one. That's all right. Beyond that, there were no
Right,
other,
Director Heidman, that's, you and I kicked that around, right? The idea was that what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the statement that the ad hoc committee, when they come to a decision, it is a decision, so it should be communicated as a decision, not as a report.
gotcha.
Because the only board action from that point forward would be what we're doing tonight, which is to rule on an appeal of that decision.
And decision is the term that's used.
Correct.
Correct.
And we're gonna leave it as that.
That's my understanding.
Correct.
I agree.
So on page 4, you're removing that highlighted?
Nope, one of the things was talking about during the creation process, what was highlighted in yellow, and Director Heidman, you might be able to speak to this more, was when you're looking at, the only sentence that was there before was that are in poor physical condition. However, they're removed because they're outdated, inaccurate, no longer useful for curricular sport or reading enrichment, or have not been utilized for an extended period of time, was one of the recommendations that came from committee. Beyond that, there's been no other public input that I have received, or that was given to me by any of the board members from the first reading.
No, and this particular section pertains only to the curation process. Director Heidman provided clarification, right? We're on the same page on that one too?
Yeah, I just wanted
We're
to
not
make-
talking about an appeal or like, let's say a resource is removed through an appeal process, that this has nothing to do with that. That's later in this document.
Because there is something stated that an appeal cannot be made until 5 years has passed on a book. This is the curation procedure and process. And I just wanted to make sure that it applied to both sentences of paragraph C, because at the time, it appeared that it only applied to the last sentence.
Makes sense. It was a good change. Thank you.
Besides, the book's incorrect. What does that mean?
It fits inaccurate.
Well, so
So I think that's,
that's because the science changed, or?
they think about planets, so depending on how outdated the
Oh, they
book
found
is,
a
so you
new
look at,
planet.
9 to 8, I mean.
Gotcha.
So some of those things may make the material no longer applicable.
You're talking about paragraph C now,
Mhm.
DJ?
I don't know which paragraph it is, but.
It's page 4,
It's the curation procedure?
Oh, yeah,
C.
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Was that the question you're
Yeah, I
asking me?
just-
What would determine that?
I was just curious, what makes it inaccurate? There's been a trend across the country to kind of rewrite history, a lot of the books, and change the wording in some of our classical books, and I just was wondering who gets to decide what's inaccurate. But I understand, you find a new planet, you can't be teaching people that there's 8 of them, there's 9 of them.
Well, I'm still Team Mercury, just for the record. It's a planet to me, and it's always going to be that way.
That was the first example that came to mind, sorry.
It's a good example.
Okay.
So under 11 would be, let's see.
You still on page 4?
I am on page 4, number 11, and then B. Are we giving the district permission to use whatever resource they choose to assist with selections of books?
Basically, yes.
Okay.
In other words, we were trying to lay, based on community feedback, based on board discussion, it doesn't preclude them from using the American Library Association necessarily, but it doesn't name it as a specified resource that is the dictated resource to be used.
Can I go back to page 3? Paragraph 4. I think Director Donlinger had raised the issue at the last meeting. What is the definition of atypical student? And I can't remember what, I think the previous
It was in our previous
policy had students and atypical students, I think. And I guess what I would propose is to have, and the needs and interests of all students for whom the materials were selected, and eliminate including atypical. In other words, treating all students.
It does seem unusual to me to just call it the atypical students. They're students. Can we just make it for all the students? I agree with you. It's just kind of a.
I don't remember, was this referring to like books that are Braille?
May I summon Director Murtha to the
Mr. Murtha gave
microphone?
a
Sorry, I told you we weren't going to bring you up,
Sorry
but I'm
about
bringing you
that.
up. Right, add it to the list, the long list of lies I've told you.
The intent of the language of atypical from the original policy, as I read it, is intended to ensure that we're conscious that there are small parts of the community or even individuals who think differently, who are different, who still need to see themselves in the holdings of the library. We had a speaker earlier in public comment address that very piece. And so it's about being intentional about doing that. The all language, I'm a little concerned that if we use all tonight, where we all agree that we're concerned about the individuals, 5 years from now, when it's not all of us, is that language going to be equally interpreted that way? So if we're not comfortable with atypical, perhaps we would change all to each, to make sure that we're conscious of individual needs in the library as well as collective needs.
And then my understanding on that particular red line, that was not part of the MSBA boilerplate. We added that somewhere along the way,
No, it was
right?
part of it's in our original policy.
It's in our original policy. And so I'm offering that that's what our interpretation of what the intent of original policy was. Because you're right, it was
Like
not
the
in
each?
MSBA.
Yeah, that,
Sure.
I think it makes it easier to understand. I mean,
So you'd insert that in the interests of each student instead of the students?
Yeah, and needs and interest of each student for whom the materials were selected, is how I would redline it.
I can get on board with that.
I can too.
I know it's hard to wordsmith at the table, but I think what we're collectively trying to do is preserve that some students have different experiences, different values, different worldviews, different histories, different stories, and they need to be able to find themselves in the library, even if that's not something I personally would be interested in or I agree with.
yeah, I think each, that's cool, yeah.
I don't really like the word atypical anyway.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be called atypical.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be the atypical one myself.
I found it to be interesting language, but I do want to honor that they were attempting to be inclusive in what they were attempting, and they wrote that policy.
Most
The intent's
definitely.
clear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely.
All right, I think we have broad consensus on making that slight change. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, otherwise, everything else in red, like I said, unless it's highlighted in yellow, it's the same thing we saw last time.
Well, no, it's the, from what you've seen from, I sent out the revision based on what was discussed at the
Yeah.
board table. So there were changes
Both
from the
boards seen
original.
it?
Yep, correct.
So page 7, paragraph 5, it's gonna be, decision, not report.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Because in the following sentence, where is it, or the previous sentence, where is it?
It's up 2 sentences above that one.
Yeah, so it's the same thing, it's just making it consistent with the prior one.
Okay, I need some help understanding the, from the reconsideration of specific library material to then, appealing that decision. So in paragraph 3, no, in paragraph D, the second paragraph of D1, formal request for reconsideration. Okay, if a specific library material is the subject of a formal request for reconsideration and a final decision is made to retain that specific library material, then the specific library material shall not be subject to additional requests for reconsideration for 5 years. I get that. Where does the appeal part come into this?
Well, that's part of like, so when a decision's made, so let's say it does, they can appeal it if it's changed, then it's still held for 5 years.
I mean, I think what you're saying is there's some vagary here,
Yes.
right? Like in terms of tonight, for example.
Okay.
Right, so as of right now, Empire of Storm stands as retained, pending the board vote on the appeal in a few minutes. So what you're saying is, how's that cut, right? Because mine is whatever the final determination is, because some of the ad hoc committee's decisions aren't gonna be appealed to the school board. So if they're not appealed to the school board, it would be whatever the final determination is based on how far it goes through that process. Right.
What I'm struggling with is the whole appeal process.
Okay.
So you have 12 people, and I think we had 14, but you had 12 people with Empire of the Storms, and those 12 people unanimously decided to retain that book. Where does, that's not a decision, that somebody can appeal that decision?
Correct.
Do we need any qualifying factors for being able to appeal a decision?
Let me go to.
You know,
I think the mere fact that they disagree with the ad hoc committee's vote of, in this example, 12 to nothing. that
Yeah, I mean, the
person-
only sentence that, to your point, the only thing that says it is the decision may be appealed to the school board. That's the only language we have in there that talks about that. And it doesn't say anything specific that calls that out as a final decision.
yeah, and
Right.
that's what's.
Because if you're looking at,
confusing.
well, I want to challenge this in 5 years, but it was never appealed. But we do have a statute of limitations, if you will, on the appeal process, right? Somebody can't appeal an ad hoc, because 606 was vague on that. What we tried to do with 631 was say, once there's a committee ruling on a resource, you have X number, I don't remember what the term, it's 14 days or something to appeal it to the school board.
Yeah, I think my concern is that you have a committee of 12 people from the community making a decision, and, which takes a lot of time and resources. And then a person can fill out a paragraph and appeal that whole process all over again. And
In
how-
5 years.
In 5 years, but that's not what happened this time, it happened immediately.
No, the parameter of 5 years basically means, let's say a book is removed. All right, so that book will remain removed, and 5 years past that removal
Okay.
date, somebody can challenge and say, I want that book reviewed because I want it to be retained. So the decision and recommendation from MSBA is that you put a window in, so it's not indefinitely retained or indefinitely removed. Because right now, it's indefinitely retained or removed, like forever. So some of that
Oh, right now
clarification,
it
right?
is. Okay.
And they figured out 5 years was a good cycle of, you typically will
Okay,
see a group of students or age of students move through, you might see a different, and it might be challenged for different reasons, right? Some people
Okay.
might challenge sexual content, some people might challenge the violent content. So 5 years, that's where that term 5 years came put in.
Okay.
And then through the process, they still recommend it because it's been in place that you allow an appeal. Some policies
Okay.
don't, they make the decision final with the committee, some policies have made the decision final with the superintendent.
So why do we say that they have to wait 5 years if they can appeal?
It's the immediate appeal, it's the complainant, whoever filed to have the book retained or removed is the complainant. So they
Okay.
have to be the one to appeal.
Okay.
So think of it like a court case.
Yeah.
Like if you got a guilty verdict, if you will, right? You can either accept the verdict and the sentencing that goes with it, or you can appeal it to an appeals court and go to an appeals court. We're the appeals court. And then if it never comes to us, then the decision made below us was final. If it comes to us, the decision we make is final, and then that 5-year clock starts ticking from that point, whether it's retained or removed. Does that make any sense?
It does make sense. I'm still struggling with it because I can't imagine I would reverse a decision that a committee of 12 people would make based on their due diligence to make a decision about a resource. But I guess maybe somebody would.
Well,
Director
My-
Donnelly?
So my opinion on that is, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think that's why there's a school board. Because it's our job to, people elect us to get them what they want in this big machine. And if that's what our job is to kind of help steer the ship at a high level, not day-to-day stuff, but that's what they elected us for. And, you know, whenever organizations, da-da-da-da-da, without oversight, they can get going a certain direction. And, you know, a few people could change the direction of our schools, and I think it's our job to make sure it stays in lanes. So I think it's important that people can get to us, myself.
Okay.
I'm
Director
saying-
Hyden,
Well,
do you have something?
think I do.
I was gonna explain to Michelle that it could be overturned tonight. I'm not saying it's going to be. I think where the 5-year comes in is that we just don't want people coming back every year appealing a book that a 12 committee member
All the time that was.
said.
But you're
"Hey,
more broadly questioning the concept
know.
of the appeal altogether,
Right,
right?
the
Is that-
5-year part, I don't have any issue with.
Oh, okay,
or
okay,
concern
okay.
about. It's the whole appeal process. If the committee makes a decision to retain a book,
Well, and if
the
you read
whole-
how the policy is written now, if you go to page 7, item number 5, the complainant may appeal the review committee's decision to the school board by submitting a written appeal to the superintendent within 14 days of submission of the review committee's decision. The school board shall respond to the appellant a written decision on the appellant's request within 6 weeks of receiving the submitted form. So to me, this is a lot like a vote of non-concurrence, where you have to give a written response back. So it's putting the burden back on a school board. So the committee of 12 had the burden of reading the book, discussing the book. Then it's gonna come, you have one school board member who sits on that. It's gonna put basically like that vote of non-concurrence. You, the school board, are gonna have to then weigh in and give a written response. How you know.
And I think, to your point, Michelle, if we as a board have written this policy to delegate that work to this committee of 12, and then we say, it doesn't matter what you think anyway, why wouldn't we just take on the work of being that committee? And why would we delegate it out to have a committee made up of community members and professionals and students and so forth? If we're not going to uphold or honor what they've come up with, I mean, then it's on us to do that same due diligence, to read that book, to go through the criteria, to understand what's being asked of us, and I will take that on gladly, but I do think the community should be part of that through that delegation to the committee.
And I think that's what's happening when it comes to, again, so you gotta look at, there was a curriculum process, now we're looking specifically to library materials. Really what's happening how this appeal process is written now in the new policy, that's exactly what the school board would be assuming. You would be repeating the process of the committee to give a response back in writing to the appellant.
Within 14 days.
No, you have 6 weeks.
Okay.
The complainant has 14 days after the decision.
The 6 weeks is by design meant for us to do what so let's say Dr. Hahn gets the document, the appeal, and she tells us about it, right? We have to get it on this agenda, and that 6 weeks gives us time to get it worked into an agenda with board members, individual board members, to have as much time to do whatever due diligence they want to do. I submit my own opinion on it is that I don't know that it's incumbent on specific board members to do due diligence if they have specific concerns that are being brought to them by the community. And then the other thing I would say is I would maybe be a little bit more on board with that if the ad hoc committee representation was heavier weighted to community members. But right now it's extraordinarily heavy on district staff.
That's what I was gonna say. So if you look at it, Sarah, one member of the administration, one member of the school board, 2 principals, 2 teachers, and a library media specialist, you're already at 7 or 8. So this one's 12-0, but who's to say the next one's not 7-5? So I just think that people should, and then, 2 members of the DAC, I mean,
That's literally your community representation right there.
that's all you got.
So I don't think it invalidates anything, don't get me wrong. The
No, I'm not
staff are
saying that-
closer to it and they're the professionals. I don't want to take anything away from that,
Yeah,
but I
I'm not
want
saying
to.
that there's any malintent, but if you're on the other side, you'd be looking at the deal going, it's a stacked deck. That's how I would look at it. I mean, it's like, well, why would I even waste my time? Because they obviously think it's okay. I don't. It's a differing of opinions. And that's the nice thing about America, is that you can have a different opinion, and you can say what it is. So I think we got plenty of representation. I think that if I was on the other side, if I was trying to do one of these book deals, I'd feel defeated before the first meeting of the deal. I'd be like, you guys don't need to read the book, you can just vote, because you're all at work together. You're gonna be like, what do you think about the book, That's how I would feel. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I think it's important that they have the
But
opportunity.
to Director Spear, if you have an avenue that every single one of these can be appealed, I mean, what are the odds somebody's not gonna appeal them?
What do you mean? Everyone
Well, it'd be
works.
like you're Harrison Smith and you get fined for hitting somebody, you're not gonna, and you're not gonna not appeal it to the league office, you're gonna take your shot and see if you can get away out of the fine, right? So now you're staring down the barrel of 17 appeals.
And
So
then-
I
yeah.
get the logic behind
Well,
it.
and then we're just negating the work of, the ad hoc committee. And I would rather, if we're going to have that committee and have them make a recommendation and do that due diligence to make it feel like it's whatever it needs to be, that people feel it's represented, rather than us having to see every one of those as an appeal.
So are you suggesting, Sarah, that the committee makeup may be changed?
I'm open to
Or we
that.
should change it?
I'm open to that idea.
Okay.
I don't have a recommendation tonight on what that would look like.
Yeah, you're raising a very good point.
Well, I brought a point up that you guys didn't like, was that I don't think the students should be on there. And if I was a parent, I wouldn't understand why we'd have students on this committee. Students are young, they're easily influenced, we all know that, they're just normal. But why would they get a vote on something that if I was bringing this appeal, or whatever you call it, why would they get a vote? Some of them don't even have driver's licenses. Like, why would they get to decide what books get to stay in the school? It's like I said, if you ask them what we got, we don't let them pick the menu. We don't let them pick out the textbooks in the classroom. So why would we allow them to vote on something like this if you had an upset parent? We're elected, and the people that run the school are hired, or, work there. And I understand they're professionals and they've worked hard, and I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying that we're the elected ones, so we're supposed to set these policies that make sense. And so I'm with you. I think we should change the makeup of the board and who picks the people. That's another thing. Do you
that's
pick
what-
them, Heidi, or who picks it?
So well, a lot of it's been by who responded first, so we took them in order to email, so like Michelle Brecken responded first, she was the first board member. Director Hyman responded second, he's the second board member. I'm sure you're all gonna get a chance to serve. One of the concerns that came to us from MSBA is when you do a community member, how do you ensure equal representation?
Right.
So that was some of the concern. The student voice, again, also with the work of MSBA. Students are the ones who have the free choice with the book. The student representatives that sit on this committee have to have guardian permission. And examples of the guardians are working alongside those students to be prepared for that ad hoc committee. So they're not operating in isolation. They're working with a parent or guardian, because otherwise they wouldn't be approved to sit on that committee.
I'm not saying that they're bad kids. I'm not saying it certainly has nothing to do with the kids. It's more on my side of the way I think about the deal is, I don't understand. They can't vote, they can't do this, they can't do that. They can't sign a contract. Why would they get to pick what books are in the school?
They're not.
Makes absolutely zero sense to me.
But I think they're the consumers of that, right? And if our goal by having books in the library is to get them to read more, to use their imagination, to use their critical thinking skills, I want it to be something that they're interested in. And so I think having students on that committee as consumers of what we have in the library and reflecting their experiences is really important.
And I do think it's insulting to think that somebody on this committee doesn't make their own decisions. I mean, I wasn't influenced by anybody else on this committee. I made my decisions based on, through my lens, what I felt was reasonable and right. And I think everybody else does the same thing. I mean, to assume that because they're all professional educators that they can't think for themselves is not really fair.
I would just ask you, Sarah, in this case, the students don't get to pick the book. The book's been chosen for them. So I agree with you that students, they're gonna gravitate towards books that they like, et cetera, et cetera. Here, they don't have that option. They're told, you need to read this, I guess.
For the committee.
For the committee, yeah, just for the committee,
Yeah.
just for the committee,
Yep.
yep.
And actually volunteers were sought, just like from
Oh, okay. Yeah.
the district advisory parents
Mhm.
and community members, volunteers were sought. And again, then you have the elected official from the community, so it is trying to find that balance. This committee makeup is very similar to any process throughout the entire state. That's why MSBA has recommended it and researched it. the interesting thing is Brainerd had this process in place for curriculum well before the outline recommended policy.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think this is gonna be something we're gonna solve tonight, and I'm sorry that I brought it up.
No.
But knowing that we've got another reading, could we move on the items that we've decided on tonight and send it back to committee to figure out and bring a recommendation for, what we do next?
We might have to have a special committee meeting then.
so just so I'm reflective, the two challenges or the two things that require further thinking, you're looking at the ad hoc committee makeup would be one, and the second would be having an opportunity to appeal or not appeal. Is that what I hear, or I don't wanna?
That's what I'm saying, but I won't, if we're comfortable with that.
Well, I have one more.
Okay.
I think it's ridiculous to make people read the whole book. So, I don't need to read the whole book. I think it's an insult. You said I was insulting those other people? I think you're insulting my intelligence. I can read
I wasn't
a
saying you
couple
were
sentences.
insulting me, I was just
Well,
saying that
I can read a
it's
couple sentences out of some of these books and know that I don't want my kids seeing that crap. And I don't know why we'd have our tax dollars tied up. We have all these teachers in here with a purpose tonight, and we don't have any money to pay them. And their working conditions don't sound too great from what I heard from a couple of them today because of these behavioral issues. And here we are wasting our time on this. You know, I mean, it's like, I don't know why on earth you have to read the whole book. It's it's just crazy to me. You know, it's kind of like the t-shirts. Whoever talked about the t-shirts, I can't remember who talked about the t-shirts. You can't write it on the t-shirt. You can't have it in the movie. The newspaper can't print it.
Is
You
this
know?
the person making the appeal
I don't know.
or making?
I don't remember.
the
There's 20
complainant?
people. I
That-
don't know
I
what's wrong
mean-
with me. I don't feel.
Has to read the whole book?
The review committee.
Oh.
When you read the policy, it's page 7, item 4, the review committee shall examine the specific.
I'm talking about
Did we
page 6.
take that out? Yeah, he's
C3.
talking about page 6.
Page 6, C3. The complainant must attest to have right.
I mean, technically, they have to attest to it, having read the book, they don't have to read the book.
What page?
Page 6, C3.
D. Yeah, oh,
C3, right above D.
Very last sentence.
I had to read
Well,
the whole book.
and I had
I don't
asked-
need to read the whole
I
book.
had
I just want to
asked
look at the
this-
pictures.
Yeah, I had asked this question at a previous board meeting. What does read or viewed? Is there a difference between those two words? I mean, to me, there are.
We discussed
I
it
mean,
the
one
last.
is you could just sit there and page through the whole
If it's a
handbook.
graphic novel or
Graphic
something that
novel.
has photographic or visual stuff in it.
Okay, I'm just.
That was
Yeah,
an
the only thing
example.
we had also talked about was the idea of adding verbiage in here for listened, in case somebody was doing an audio version of it. Like you had a visually disabled person or something, and we forgot to, I think, address that.
Good idea.
My only concern really with putting this back to the committee without just making a definitive directional choice is we're gonna prolong this, and I think there are a few people
No.
outside this body that would love to see this drag out into March.
No.
I don't think any of us want it to drag out into March. So if we go back to the drawing board at the policy committee level, then what happens is Director Heidman and I go back in there, we wrangle around a little bit, then we come back and we go, and then, so our third reading of this would be at best February meeting.
I can live with the makeup of the ad hoc committee, as long as you let them continue to appeal to us. And then, like the thing I asked about the kids, you guys say, no, that's, okay, fine, I can live with that. The read the whole book thing is just a sentence, you could just find out if your committee is okay with it and just strike it. Kinda like we did with the first big paragraph that was on this, it got smoked.
I don't think you can really evaluate an entire book by reading a couple of sentences, so I'm not on board with that. I think if we're gonna be a learning institution and you're looking at a literary experience, you're not gonna garner from it what you need to garner from it in 2 sentences.
Well, I will speak more to that when we get to the actual appeal, because I think it's germane to the appeal itself that we're gonna hear tonight, or that we're gonna discuss tonight. I guess I could go one of 2 ways on this. One would be, I would be fine with getting rid of that attestation altogether. Because the reality is, the complainant must attest, are we gonna do like we're gonna do a Jeopardy quiz?
Attest them?
We can ask them 20 questions to see if they read the book? I mean, we have no way to validate that we read the book. It's an honor system situation anyway.
Can I take it as a sign of respect? So we're taking 12 individuals and telling them that they need to read How many pages?
Let's get them the clip.
800.
800 pages.
Roughly.
So because we've told the committee they have to read that book. to make a-
Understood, but to me, it's
then-
the same as when you said that only a parent could challenge, one of the drafts that we had early on said only parents, not community members, could challenge a book. And my point was, if there are people out there that have a problem with the book, they're gonna find a parent to front the challenge for them.
Plus,
right?
we just went through our levy, and they're paying for what's going on in these schools, whether they have kids in the school.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, we already solved
Yeah,
that one. I'm just
MSBA
using
didn't
it
have
as
to
another
do anything.
example where, who are we to judge whether if they, we want them to sign a form that says I read the book?
Right, it's,
I mean, that's my thing. I would prefer that people read it so that they can judge it in its totality, unless there are certain things, again, where there may be a very specific instance within a publication that somebody has a very specific, it was mentioned during public comment tonight, where, there's something, one individual scene, for lack of a better word, in a work that is problematic for you. You need to know what else is in the book, right? Because you as an individual, if you're concerned about it for your children or the district's children, probably, don't care if 99% of the content is non-objectionable if there's an objectionable piece in there. So to me, I kind of go both ways on it. I guess I sort of don't care whether they read the book or not. I get why we would want them to, because we want them to make an informed choice on why they're challenging the book and have the ability.
But
And I
that's-
guess the
that's
way
their
you
choice.
could do that, we could kill two birds with one stone by automatically including the complainant as a committee member on the ad hoc committee.
well, they might always have one vote going the other way. It would take care of the unanimous votes.
So what are we arguing about, or what are we discussing?
We're trying to decide whether, I think what
Are we
we've
back to
decided
the
is everybody's
committee?
back to comfortable with the makeup. We've come to what I
We're
would call
awfully close.
compromise
You
on the
guys did a
makeup
nice
of the
job on
committee.
it, by the way, I think it's way better than what we had before, so good job.
Well, appreciate that, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It really comes
there's been a
down
lot of
to the
work.
two questions that are still on the table is, what is the board consensus or prevailing thought on whether there should be an appeal process to the school board available or not, this is the first time this has come up, by the way. I haven't heard this concern voiced prior to tonight.
Because
that's
I
a
was
good-
confused, and it, like, on number 7, on page 8, number 7 says, further appeal may be pursued through the courts only as applicable under federal and state law. So you've got the review, you've got the appeal, and then you've got the next appeal goes to the courts. Is that how
In theory, if
this?
somebody was gonna take it that far.
Right, but I'm
I
trying
would pay to
to
watch
figure
that.
out how
Yeah, I would
this
too.
process, what this process looks
Be in the
like.
front row.
So, for the reasons that were stated by a couple of other board members, I'm in favor of personally in favor of retaining an appeal process. I just think, again,
I think so
if
too.
the elected people aren't the backstop for something that's going on, then what purpose are we serving, I guess? Don't get me wrong, I'm not relishing the idea of reading all those books, because I will read them before I rule on them. But
So we as a board, it would be,
If they appeal to the board, right now it states, the school board shall respond to the appellant, a written decision on the appellant's request within 6 weeks of receiving the submitted form.
So now that puts that into question, because if you're a person that wants to read an 800 page, sorry, they probably are about 800 pounds. Well, Sarah Moss one's only weighing about 3 pounds, I've read all of them. Then we would probably want a protracted timeline there to allow us time to do our own due diligence as individual board members before we rule on appeal, right? So 6 weeks doesn't feel great, you're probably gonna wanna take that out to like 12.
I think we spent time on the 6 weeks, thinking that gave us time between two board meetings.
Yeah,
Because
that
we
was just to
give-
try to get scheduling figured out,
Well, we give the committee 4 weeks.
and I'm fine with that.
from front to back.
I'm fine with the 6 weeks, yeah.
Well, then 6 is fine with me, I
Mhm,
guess.
I'm fine with that, too.
I'm fine with that.
But I think the expectation before, if we're going to not honor that committee, that ad hoc committee's ruling, then we probably need to read the books.
Well, and then we'll speak to that again during the appeal itself, when it comes up in a minute. Because there's a couple different ways that you could come at that in terms of motions and approaches, right? It's not just the book. It could be a board determination on the validity of the process that the committee followed. Did they follow the process as prescribed in what we know is a fairly not well-written policy 606, which is unfortunately the tracks we have to run that train on until this is finalized. So, I guess,
Can I just ask another question on page 8, number 6? What is a minority report is made? I didn't understand what that meant. So the written report shall be signed by all members, blah, blah, blah. Then this shall be the official record of the case. If a minority report is made, it shall be included with the official report.
Minority report would be, let's say, the recent board decision was 11-1.
committee.
The committee coming out of ad hoc. That one person could write a minority
It's like a
report.
dissenting opinion in a Supreme Court
Dissenting
case.
opinion, basically. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so what's the deal?
Well, if we're gonna do this in committee, we need to set up a,
Well, I can work on that. I just want to make sure when I
Okay.
bring it back to committee, I'm understanding what we're going to review. So the notes I have, because we've all gone back and forth, like you've said one and then negated it, so I'm just
Okay.
trying to track. Review the appeal process, so number 5 on page 7. You said we need to do that. Do we remove it? Do we keep it? You've gone back and forth, so
The
when
appeal
I'm-
process?
Yep, so number 5, like, Director Brecken questioned, does it stay at ad hoc? What I hear you saying is really now you're all in agreement that that should stay. It should be,
I
have
don't know
the,
that we're in agreement, but there's probably a plurality.
so is there any, so I'm looking at what I need to do with lines and ink.
well, I think the big thing, Heidi, is the committee, the makeup of the
Makeup
committee.
committee, review the makeup of the committee?
Because that may, in our discussion within policy, we might sit back and say, well, if this committee is made up of a lot more community members, then it becomes, I guess, in the eye of the beholder, a little bit more of a committee as well. Then we might sit back and say, yeah, then that committee, with the makeup of it that we've decided, we don't think it should be appealed, or it can still be. I mean, but I mean, right now, it's just,
That's why I prefer Director Donlinger's approach. I think if you try to start playing with the chemistry or the makeup of that committee, what you're doing is now you're putting a focus on how the committee's selected. If you start to get these, like, I don't know, I think it invites a lot of things that create a lot of ambiguity where, as elected officials, again, I was gonna say it later, I'll say it now. If these books that are coming up that are gonna go through the committee process, if you're out there in the committee and you know it's gonna be appealed, or you feel it should be appealed to the board, you're better than filling out one of these and coming up and talking to us at this microphone. You're way better off reaching out to the 6 of us individually through email and explaining your case, pro or anti. Because A, you're gonna get more face time and a more ability to articulate your position and your rationale behind your stance. And B, you're gonna get a one-on-one response from a board member, usually on what they sit, where they sit on those different things. So I think community voice then, if you have that during the appeal process, everybody, literally, every taxpayer in this community has access to comment to their elected officials on that issue, and then that becomes representative in the appeal process, which that's not existent in that room when the ad hoc committee is meeting. That is a committee that's selected by district staff through a volunteer process. I'm not saying that they stack the deck, and I know you didn't say that either, I'm not trying to put those words back in your mouth.
You can see how a
But it
person
can
might
create
feel
the
like that.
perception of that, for sure. So from my perspective, the idea of tweaking that makeup of the committee, you're just inviting more public concern about how that committee's put together, especially if you have a split decision on it. I think there is power. And again, we have an appeal to talk about tonight. When you get a 12-0 from a group of professionals with a couple of community members and a board member on there, pretty powerful to me. Yeah.
so,
Don't forget about them.
We had one.
So for me, I guess unless somebody's still voicing concern, and Director Brecken, I'm talking to you here, I'm in favor of retaining the appeal and not playing with the makeup of the ad hoc committee.
I can live with that.
I can live with that.
Yeah, more than anything, I was confused. It says you can't appeal, it goes to a court of law, and then there is this little paragraph where you can appeal.
We might be able to play with the language a little bit on that, so why don't we, we don't have to wait for a full committee meeting. Director Murtha and Dr. Hahn and Director Heidman and myself can work on that a little bit and get a little more clarity in there.
All right, then I'm gonna make a motion.
Does that work for you, Sarah? I mean, as
Well,
far
we have
as-
one more thing we have to solve before we get a motion though.
Okay.
We gotta decide on the requirement for the attestation of reading the book or not. That's the other outstanding item we haven't really.
As, from the board member's perspective?
No, from the people making
Well,
the
no, as
complaint.
written in 631, the draft policy says that the complainant will attest to having read the entire book.
And that's kind of insulting. What if I read the first 3 chapters and I thought that's enough, I don't need to read anymore?
I would like them to read the book.
Well, I think they probably will, but I think it's kind of insulting to tell you that you have to read the book.
If you're going to challenge it, I think you should have read it.
It's pretty brazen to challenge a book that you haven't read.
Well, I've read enough.
Well, do we say anything in here
Well, I
about,
get to decide what's good.
Well, I don't
for
think we need to
my
beat,
kids.
the horse is dead. Like, we can, and I think I've got a fair sense of, so if we think of it, it's as written, coming from committee. So do we have, if we would count Director Ward, right? And let's say Director Ward just, I have no idea where he would be at on it, but let's just say, let's just leave his vote sitting to the side, because I feel bad doing this, but I mean, right now, I'm in favor of leaving the policy as written. And if people want to just attest to having read the book, let them read, attest to reading the book. I can't follow them home and find out if they read the book or not.
So they could lie.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hell of a policy. Great idea.
But the idea being that at least you've taken the time, if you're going to take the time to make 12 people take all this time out of their lives to go through all these processes.
Let's not
and
forget
do all
one
that
thing.
stuff.
Let's not forget one thing. That the building principal could make the decision, and we wouldn't have wasted the last 6 months of our lives on this.
Well, let's
The
not
building
forget the second
principal-
thing. That happens a lot already.
Great. I heard it happen in one of our schools. after
And in
this whole
fairness, some of
thing
these
started.
books were challenged under the auspices or the preconception that they were sitting in Forest View when in fact they were not. But the challenges were not repealed
But who
or
are we
pulled
going
back once they knew they were in the high school, which to me are two entirely different things, right?
Well, the books were coded wrong, correct?
No, what happens is the books are ordered because our district media specialist is housed at Forest View. Most of those resources are ordered and shipped to Forest View. So when there was a data request done, the people doing the data request requested the invoices and got the invoices that showed the shipping address as Forest View.
Director Murtha said that some of them were coded improperly.
I'm sure there are some cases of that, but that the
They're working
minority.
on getting it cleaned up.
And there's some, when the books come in, they review them, they determine, nope, we're moving this book up. Right, so the
Well, I
resource
just
comes
want
in
to
and they
be,
move
I
it
just,
up.
call it devil's advocate. But we can make all these deals that, oh, you're not gonna read the book, you're not gonna, simple decisions. How many books are in the school? 5,000, 10,000, 1,000? One less isn't really gonna make too big of a difference. This all could have been handled a long time ago. So, in defense of the people that are bringing these concerns, there are two sides to every coin. And, so anyways,
I mean, this is an unreasonable thought. It's not the first one that I've ever had in my life, but if we're gonna allow the school district personnel to order books based upon reviews that they've read, why can't an ad hoc committee member do the same thing, pull a bunch of reviews and read the reviews and not read the whole book? Now, I understand that it wouldn't be fair to the librarian, if we order 1,000 books, to read them all. But
it's impossible.
It's an unreasonable request, but yet in the same breath, I mean, you could argue that, hey, like maybe just, view it or look at different, other types of websites that, I mean, I'm on the committee for the next book. I've read the whole damn thing. It isn't that difficult. I'm retired though too, so I got plenty of time, but, I would think, the attestation to the fact that they read it, to me, is good enough. I'm not gonna question, like you said, Kevin, I'm not gonna follow them home.
Well, if we're counting noses, we've got enough to move forward with keeping that language as written, and that satisfies the other outstanding item that we had pre-motion.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the second reading of policy 631 with 3 changes. 1, to the word report, replace it with decision. 1, to the word, or the paragraph, yes, for each, and then also adding listening to reading. They can also listen to it as an option.
Good point, because it's not in there now.
That's correct.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Heidman to approve the second reading of MSBA Policy 631 with the 3 changes highlighted by Director Spear. Any further discussion? Hearing
What are we
none,
voting on?
we're voting on going forward with the third reading with those changes that we just highlighted.
So this doesn't
It can
really,
still be discussed, it can still be discussed at the next board meeting. If there's something that comes up.
okay,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, and those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we'll put it up for a third reading, hopefully in January. All right. Moving on to the next item would be the approval of the new Earth and Space Science curriculum as presented.
gotta
Oh, I'm
skip-
sorry, I got to go to the next policy, I'm sorry.
I hope we
This
have-
is the amended agenda, second reading of MSBA Policy 720 on vending machines. And I didn't get a chance to set my changes to this, but I got to go to the city council. I want all Pepsi machines removed from Brainerd and all replaced with Coca-Cola. My anti-Pepsi campaign continues.
I don't think I have that kind of power, but.
If you could look into it, that'd be
I
great.
think the superintendent would have to leave.
No Mountain Dew?
Well, Mountain Dew would be missing. We did not receive any public input or feedback from the first reading of this policy.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Director Donnelly with a second from Director Brecken. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have some questions. And maybe what I can do instead of asking all these questions is to get together with Heidi after the end of the meeting and give you the name of 2 individuals that spearheaded the last time that there were vending machines in our school district. And they've got I think they've got some good points to make because, everything's cash. Who's gonna take care of the machines when they break down? There was just a lot, I think, in fact, it was a econ class that was involved, I believe, with the vending machines. Maybe some of the teachers that are sitting here but they took care of it, so I'll talk to you about it, but,
I don't feel, none of that would directly go right into policy per se, right? It would be more about vendor selection.
I don't know how in-depth we want to get with,
Okay.
I'll let,
We should review, just to see if, there's a lot of
This is second reading, so
broad-
same thing, right? You guys can confer on it,
Okay.
and
I don't
have a
if
problem.
something's
Yeah.
funky, then we can tackle it at policy, you and I can, Randy?
Yep.
Okay.
Will there be a third reading?
Yes.
for this?
Because, back then, from what I was told, there were some pretty decent revenues made off these vending machines. Kids took trips that were involved with the vending machines. They went to Europe, they went to China. There was a lot of neat stuff that was happening inside that class, so.
Okay, good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion? Right, did we get a motion on this one? I didn't even-
Yep, I made the motion.
I'm sorry, so,
Michelle
yeah, I got
seconded
it, I'm sorry. I just had it written in the wrong place because I'm running one item ahead all night tonight for some reason. So we have a motion from Director Donlinger with a second from Director Brecken to approve MSBA policy, second reading of 720 vending machines. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now,
Kevin,
yes, sir.
can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
I'll talk to you.
Okay. We will session, please.
It was cool.
It's excellent.
We
Some
will
of the
get
stuff that
underway
they
with
do.
the
My gosh.
approval of the new
It would get
Earth and
me
Space
excited for
Science
science.
curriculum as presented. So Tim Murtha, Nikki Harmer, and Madeline Anderson, please.
Thank you. Do you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to introduce Ms. Harmer and Ms. Anderson. They're here to share with you tonight progress that's being made on a project that started before the COVID pandemic around restructuring our high school science curriculum and restructuring the pathways students take through the curriculum towards graduation in fulfillment of all the state science standards. In order to do that, there are 2 courses we need to create to make sure that we have adequate pathways for students so they have both choice and they're able to fulfill each of the earth and space and earth and climate standards that are identified in the Minnesota State Science Standards. So I'll let them present both the project and where they're at in it. We're going to ask for the approval of 2 courses to be created out of this so they can continue their work.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Let me just move this here. There we are. Okay, so I'm Nicole Harmer, and I'm going to provide you with a little bit of background and overview proposing as to what our proposal is and why, and then Madeline Anderson will give some more specifics about those 2 courses. So as mentioned, this has been something that's been ongoing for several years to develop a sequence and a courses that will actually help us to meet all Minnesota State Science Standards since they've just been newly adopted and have to be implemented in 2024-25, so the next coming school year. We have some different science program goals, and whoops, here we go, this isn't going to work. There we go. Science goals in terms of developing our sequence, and one of them is that, number 1, that we want to build the capacity to deliver all the Minnesota science standards for all students utilizing common instructional models. And then I'm also going to skip down to number 5, about that flexibility that was mentioned by Mr. Murtha to deliver the required standards to all students while still allowing multiple pathways for career and college readiness, as well as to be able to access advanced coursework at the high school. The other items in between are more specific to curriculum, which we'll look for approval on specific curriculum later. This is more about the course sequence. So as we continue on past the curriculum, our rationale, again, is that we have to deliver a curriculum that all high school graduates will be required to complete 3 credits, and according to the state of Minnesota, a credit is a year of science, so 6 semesters of science, that satisfy all of the 912 academic standards in science. This includes 1 credit or 1 year of life science biology, 1 credit, or in other words, 1 year of courses that deliver the earth and space science standards, and also 1 credit or year of science that delivers either the chemistry or the physics standards. And those are the minimums for graduation. We wanted to be able to do that, but all still be able to provide flexible options for students so that they weren't locked into 3 required courses, that they still had some options based on their interest and skill levels within not only that 3 years, but beyond. I think we're struggling with some, there we go. I might have to do this. Yeah, I think you're going to have to because it's not working very well. Okay, thank you. So just quickly looking at this, and this seems a little odd that we're talking about curriculum when we're talking about course proposals, but we knew that in order to develop our course sequence that we also had to have a plan for how everything was going to fit together like a puzzle. And so in our quest to do that, we had evaluated some different curricula that would then determine what courses not only we currently offer, but which ones we may need to fill the gaps in terms of curriculum. And so we are planning to pilot test Open SciEd curriculum for the coming school year of 24-25 because we believe that that was going to be the best way for us to be able to deliver those standards. So we did some in-house evaluations and based on those determined that that was the best curriculum for all of our students. So you can go ahead and go forward, thank you. So whether it's biology, chemistry, or physics, Open SciEd curriculum came to the top. What's unique about Open SciEd curriculum is that not only does it meet what's called the Next Generation Science Standards, which was really the basis for the Minnesota Science Standards, it's also about equitable learning for all students. In addition, they only offer biology, chemistry, and physics, but Minnesota Science Standards includes the Earth and Space Science Standards as well. This curriculum actually embeds the Earth and Space Science Standards within those 3 existing courses, which gives us some flexible options for all students. So looking at this, yep, right there, thank you. So looking at this map, this shows you that previously, I think it was about a year ago, we had approval for all students in 9th grade to take our biology course as part of their required course sequence. We are going to continue with that path where all students will take biology, but then in the grades 10 through 12, they have flexible options to meet all of their other credit and standards requirements before graduation. Notice here that in blue, both biology and chemistry and as well as physics are showing with a plus ESS, which means that they're embedding the earth and space science standards. However, students are only required by the requirements of Minnesota graduation rules to have to take only chemistry or physics. So a student conceivably could take one or the other, but then still would need to fill some gaps with some earth science coursework. So in green, where other curricula, we're proposing to create 2 new earth science courses called Earth and Space, and the other one will be called Earth and Climate. In addition, we will maintain some additional semester options and year-long options in advanced coursework as well. So from there, we are going to highlight what those 2 earth and space science classes are and how they kind of fill that gap, what the open side curriculum does not meet. And I'll have Madeline Anderson start with that for you.
All right, so you got kind of the overview of why we need the earth and space, and so I'm going to talk to you specifically about what courses we're looking at. 4 sections to this presentation. So our descriptions, what would go into the course catalog that students would see, why the rationale, which Nikki already addressed to some extent, and then kind of a general curriculum overview. There's only one lesson or one unit that's already written, so it doesn't have anything to do with the specific curriculum, but just that to kind of go forward with the development of these courses. And then finally, I'll just give a quick overview of the professional development that I've been going through, and then some of my colleagues as well. So these are the 2 courses that we're proposing. So Earth and Space and Earth and Climate. So you'll notice each one is 1 credit. At Brainerd High School, that would be 1 semester. And so combined, that would be the 1 credit of the Earth and Space as required by the state. They are non-sequential, so they can be taken in either order. And you'll kind of see when we talk about enrollment options why this is important. I'd also eventually like to offer them concurrently, so a kid could sign up for either Earth and Space or Earth and Climate, no matter if it's spring semester or fall semester. Yeah, this is the description you would see in the course catalog. So this is the forward-facing to our students and parents of what they'd be signing up for.
Okay, so just to continue on with some of the rationale. I don't know why you have the magic touch, I don't, but anyway. So as mentioned, those 2019 Minnesota Science Standards that all students have to complete 1 full year, in other words, 2 semesters of Earth and Space Science to meet the requirements. And we don't currently have a course at the high school. Previously, Earth and Space Science was more developed at the middle school, and so we've had to develop a 9-12 offering. In addition, according to a document that came out from the Minnesota Department of Education with the 2023 legislative impacts, they do give some local control as to how students can actually meet those standards. So what we're proposing is that with flexibility, that there's 3 different pathways that students can meet their Earth and Space Science standards and credit requirements. Again, all students, as a reminder, will take biology in 9th grade. They'll have to take a year of either chemistry or physics sometime in grades 10 through 12. And those courses do embed some Earth and Space Science standards. So one option for students to be able to meet their Earth and Space Science standards is to take the entire 2-course sequence that we are going to propose as 2-semester courses. That would be the simplest way to receive not only their 3rd year of science, their last credits, but also all of their science standards. However, for students who maybe want to attain additional electives because of interests or career, or to be able to attain additional advanced coursework, they have a couple of other options as well. One is for them to take, say, a year of chemistry, which embeds about half of the Earth and Space Science standards, and then to backfill, in other words, take 1 semester of a course called Earth and Space that'll provide the other standards that they would be missing. So essentially, within 2.5 years, they'll have not only their standards met, but the requirements from the state of Minnesota, and they would still have 1 semester left that they could meet by taking any course that they'd like to get their last credit that's required for graduation. And we offer many electives to be able to do that. That would be very parallel to what a student that would take a year of physics, they would also get about half of the Earth and Space Science standards. And as a result, they would take the other Earth and Space Science class called Earth and Climate to backfill on the other standards that they have not yet attained, still giving them another semester to be able to make some choice as to what they would take for science. Of course, we're going to encourage that all students try to take more science than just 3 years, but there is potentially then a student would be able to also take, and it's not shown here as another pathway, but they could take biology, chemistry, and physics and still meet all of the standards and actually not take any of the new Earth and Space Science classes at all, but they would have all of those standards delivered to them within that sequence, and they could also then attain a 4th year of science of any choice that they would like to. As far as the curriculum and the materials, because Madeline will just quickly highlight like how these courses are going to be developed, it is developed on a concept called three-dimensional instruction, which is based on the next generation science standards, which have been out for roughly about 10 years. And it's just now that Minnesota is fully adopting very similar types of standards into our science standards that have been approved. These are phenomenon-driven, meaning that rather than back-ending with examples after students learn about concepts, we actually use a phenomenon like a real-world experience or observations where students will be doing a lot of the investigation and discovery of how the science works to explain that particular item, something like an earthquake or ski jumping or how a forest fire. From there, as students are going through the process of understanding those phenomenon, they are going to be working through 3 dimensions, which means that they're developing their skills, which we call science and engineering practices, things like asking questions and developing investigations and working on mathematical computations. They'll also be developing their core ideas, which is typically called content of earth science. So things about learning about plate tectonics and the different geological formations. And last, they will also be learning and using what's called cross-cutting concepts, which are the ways of thinking that cross across different disciplines. So whether it's physics, chemistry, or earth science, things like structure and function and stability and change. So utilizing all of those different things are actually part of the Minnesota standard. As an example, here's one of the earth science standards where students are asked to ask questions, which is the practice or the skill, to clarify how seismic energy traveling through Earth's interior, which is the core idea or the content, can provide evidence for Earth's internal structure, which is a cross-cutting concept. So not only will lessons be developed around those, but also assessments. So a single assessment isn't just going to ask them to spit back the content. They have to actually practice the skill and demonstrate understanding of the cross-cutting concept.
Now for the fun stuff. All right, so units of study, we were looking at, these 2 courses, and each course is going to have 3 core units, and then a final 3-week open investigation. The open investigation is going to be using the scientific principles that they've learned during that course, and then as a small group, they'd be conducting, presenting, analyzing their own data, and sharing it with their classmates. So if I can show you kind of the general overview of what this could look like and kind of what the ask is the lab materials and simulations are for Earth and Space Science tend to be a little bit more kitchen grade. So this is an example of one that I've already built into the weather and climate unit. So this is a lab conducting, like, how could we explore ocean circulation currents? And so this is like a cooking oil with like herbs mixed in, and then with a heat source you can start to build convection currents, and so that's like the base model. But then kids know that there's such thing as wind, and there's like the polar ice caps, and there's landforms, and so how can they modify this lab to make this seem a little bit more like real world? And so they'll have an opportunity to modify things like that. But again, this is all kitchen grade materials. I'm estimating less than $2,500 for startup costs, and then annual costs, I would guess less than $500 for consumables. There is a possibility of looking at like a paid subscription, but that's kind of beyond the scope of what I've figured out right now. Some other things students are going to need access to is our government and professional organizations and the data that they collect as professionals in the field. So locally, it could be like our Crow Wing County Soil and Water Conservation District. Statewide, we could look at something like the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency or the Department of Natural Resources. And then nationally, groups like NASA, NOAA, the National Weather Service. So I want students to be able to access these materials and analyze them, like in the context of Brainerd and these topics. students. And then I know a textbook is always a question, so I'm looking at a couple of OER textbooks, but I also want to build into students the ability to look at online resources and determine if that's a credible source and if we should use them or not. So that would be part of the course as well.
What does OER stand for?
Open Educational Resources? Yes,
Thank
open.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so finally, just a quick overview of the professional development. I'm super excited to offer these courses with your approval at Brainerd High School. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about why I'm a credible person to write the courses. And just knowing that we're not actually adopting a curriculum, it'll be something written in-house, so it's specific to Brainerd, looking at topics that we're concerned about locally. And some of the training I've done is through the Minnesota Science Teachers Association, and they've done a really good job of doing Minnesota-focused training. And there's been boot camps. I've gone to Moorhead State, and then I've taken a couple of online courses to prepare myself. And then as your group of science teachers, steps 1, 2, and 3, we've done like on contract time during meetings. And the 4th one is where I'm gonna need your support going forward, is training, hopefully if we have another earth and space science teacher come aboard eventually, and then also writing the curriculum and then maintaining that curriculum. So I believe
That's it. And I do just want to quick say too that we're very lucky to have Ms. Anderson. She's like one of 38 licensed high school earth science teachers in the state. It's a very low licensed area, and this curriculum generally does not exist. So this is why needing to write it to fill the gap, the extensive amount of work that she needs to put in to develop it. There's nothing that's ready to go like there is with the other curriculum. So we're very lucky to have her.
So do you have like 5 classes a day?
Of that course in particular,
Or one of the 2, or? I mean, how does that
we
work?
have no idea
Not
yet
just
what
gonna be
enrollment will
one-
look like. Yeah, no, it'll
not
be,
1 hour.
several sections. And so we usually build our schedule in the science department based on requests during registration. So we do anticipate several sections of each course, even starting next year, because this year was the year that we had to make up that little blip of where all 9th grade students were taking biology, but we still have 10th grade students taking biology. We have 39 sections of biology this semester. And we are going a little bit different than many other high schools in the state, where they just did the easy thing, which was to replace their 9th grade outgoing physical science class with an earth science class, which meant, though, that in those schools, their students are locked into earth science 9th grade, biology 10th grade, chemistry or physics junior year with no choice. And we just didn't want to develop a system where there was no choice. So we anticipate some of those 9th graders will take earth and space science next year, but some will be able to go into either chemistry or physics, and they have flexible options, grades 10 through 12. They're not pigeonholed into a specific grade, having to take a specific course, and we're ready to differentiate to make that possible.
So every kid's got to either take chemistry or physics? I mean, isn't physics like just
The
like
beauty,
in college, if you want to get rid of some of the freshmen, you just make them all take physics and about half of them flunk out? Isn't that kind of the deal?
yeah, you're right, because the beauty is the old physics was very math heavy and required really some extensive knowledge to be able to attain it. The beauty of the Open SciEd curriculum is it is literally designed for all students, and they have tons of modifications. It's more concept-based, and you allow kids to go to the level that they are ready for. So we're going to have a variety of students that are coming up with questions and investigations and doing their little labs, and they aren't necessarily all going to report it out the exact same way, which is just fine. Because of how it's scored, they have to demonstrate their growth and understanding with the skill and the concept, and as well as the content, and it's not just content-based.
So it's not just regular good old physics.
Yeah.
Like figure out the arc and the velocity. And
Right, but they do show, according to research, that students that do this type of learning in terms of acting like scientists, their interest in science is a lot greater, and they actually do continue on very often into college level, high school, beyond high school for their chemistry and physics, because it hooks them in and they see how it's related to the real world versus just I'm writing down some numbers and doing some math.
a good idea to me.
Sarah and I have the privilege of sitting on DAC, and when you guys made your presentation, I thought, wow, that would get me excited about science. It's a lot of hands-on stuff, and
That'd have been pretty fun.
it's gonna be cool. I really think it's gonna be cool.
Thank you. We're extremely excited about this going forward. And I know that Robin behind me here is kind of been our wingman helping us out, but when she speaks to people across the state with our program, because we're thinking of it a little bit differently, a lot of times we get some real interest in what we're doing. So I feel like we're really leading the way to do something a little bit different that's going to give kids not only interest, but a lot of choice.
And I wanted to make mention of that because I think it's really a celebration of the professionals and the acumen that this group has. A couple of years, I don't know if it was last year, a couple of years ago, when you brought forward the research you had done on scope and sequence and how to set students up for not only having opportunity, but the optimal course, you know, moving biology to 9th grade and the reasoning behind that. I thought it was incredible, and I love how this has progressed since then in what we can offer students. It's amazing.
Thank you. Are there any?
Asking for your approval for the creation of 2 courses.
Okay, so we can start with the first one, which is the Earth and Space Science Curriculum.
Yeah, do them separate.
You can do them together.
I guess so we'll bundle those together. All right, so I'm seeking a motion for the approval of the new Earth and Space Science Curriculum and the approval of the new Earth and Climate Science Curriculum.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Director Heidman with a second from Director Spear for approval of both curriculum as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Fun, fun, fun.
Have fun.
Those are classes I would take.
I would definitely.
Physics, I'd be like, no.
Oh, this would just be a blast to be, if you're using your hands, you know.
All right, Marcy Lord, coming up with a real quick update for the approval, of the proposal notice for the BHS Building Trades Home.
So we went out for bids. Bids were due November 17th. We received 0 bids. We've since had some interest in the trades house, so we are redefining the request. We're changing it to a proposal so that there's no deadline date. It's basically just whoever can get their proposal in first, and then that would be presented at the following board meeting. If we get no proposals after January 31st, we would have to then discuss what the next game plan would be. But hopefully we will get a proposal submitted by someone. So this will be put out, same as last time. We'll put it out on Facebook. We'll put it in the paper. Try to get it out there.
Was it priced before?
Yep, it was.
So do we think that was overpriced maybe?
So we talked about that. You know, the calculations he came up with, he thought was fair, so we didn't want to lower it so that we'd lose money, right? So we left it at the 105.
You're trying to break even and labor's free, so it shouldn't be that tough.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense.
Is there a template for the proposal? Or
There, like a floor plan?
for the proposal, like
Oh.
somebody wants to make a proposal, do they have to create that?
It literally, so like last year, we got a letter that said the amount that they wanted and then had the escrow deposit.
Okay.
So that was it. It's pretty simple.
Not too complicated, okay.
The letters from the bank normally with their financing.
How many proposals have we gotten? Bids?
None. That's why we're doing this,
Yeah, I think things are gonna open up a little bit in '24.
hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
This is last year's house.
Well, there's a lot of last year's houses.
Oh,
that
they're
are-
being built right now.
Yep.
It's being built, yeah.
Good shape. Election year, the feds will drop the rates.
Why don't you buy it and move it out to South Dakota?
Why don't you just run your railroad?
Okay.
I'll run mine.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal notice.
I'll second.
I have a proposal from Director Spear and a second from a motion from Director Spear and a second from Director Brecken to approve the proposal notice for BHS Building Trade Home. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thanks, Marcy.
All right, our final action item for the evening would be the aforementioned appeal on Empire of Storms. So a couple of ways to go about this. The board, obviously, all of you have been supplied the appeal documentation. All of you have had ample time, I believe, to review the committee notes and all of that. I'm actually going to kick it to Director Brecken to just summarize the committee findings just a little bit, if you don't mind. And
Just that the committee unanimously found that the book should be retained.
okay, that's eloquent in its brevity. That works for me. It's not my skill set, but. All right, so there's a couple of ways from a motion perspective that we could tackle this. I mean, Dr. Hahn and I talked about this a little bit. One would be if a board member has concerns about the validity of the process in terms of if it followed 606 as we understand it today. In theory, one could say that the committee didn't follow its charter under that policy to do that. Second would be to make a motion either direction that the committee did follow its charter, came forward with its decision, and either a motion to vote in favor of the appeal or against the appeal. That seems to me to be the three options that would be available to us. As to whether we discuss first and then make the motion, I'll leave that up to whoever feels compelled to make a motion. I feel like we should have like big bucks, no whammies buttons so you can get in fast enough, but nobody's rushing into this.
Well, I think that myself, everybody knows where everybody stands that's sitting here tonight. So what's there to talk about? We've been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. We have a difference of opinion. I don't think it's gonna surprise anybody how anybody votes on this. And so, you know, if we, Lon, I can make a motion that we overturn the decision by the committee.
Okay.
Then we can just go to the vote. It's gonna be the same, no matter how you word it. So, I don't know. I mean, I followed the policy. I think that we should just get on with it.
Is that a formal motion? Or
Sure.
And what was the motion again?
That we overturn the ad hoc committee. and
Motion was to
remove
approve the
book.
appeal.
Remove the
Remove
book.
the resource.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Donnelly with a second from Director Heidman to uphold the appeal and remove Empire of Storms. Further discussion? I imagine there'll be a little.
Yeah, I'll
Go ahead, Director
I'll
Heidman.
open it up. First of all, I totally respect the time and effort that this committee has put in. I'm gonna be involved with the next one, and I know there's time involved in reading the book and reviewing it, et cetera. And I don't make this decision lightly. I've thought about it. I've read articles. I've reviewed the transcript of the ad hoc committee, and there's a lot of things in here that you could say just the opposite. You know, people, you know, families should make their decision what their kids should read. Agree with you 100%. Then go out and buy it. We don't need to be buying the stuff. So I just want to make that point, that a lot of stuff in the committee, you can just flip it on its head. My reasons for removal, this book since 2018 has been checked out 3 times. It could be argued that the book could be removed under library curation policy. Boy, it hasn't been read very often. And I know we don't have it in 606, but we're gonna have it in 631. What can happen, you know, if it's not read enough, if it's not, you know, if it's damaged, et cetera, et cetera. But one of them is reading the book. Well, it's only been read 3 times. If it was made into a movie without screen modifications, I believe at best it would be rated an R, and at worst it would be NC-17. And I've asked this question numerous times, and I've never received an answer. Who's going to be harmed if the Empire of Storms is removed from our library? And if we can prevent just one person from going down the road of sexual deviancy, isn't it worth it? This book has been removed from Forest View Middle School. And we say, well, let's just move it to the high school. Problem is, there's no guardrails at the high school. None. And that's right in the transcript of the committee reports. I'm not going to read it. I mean, if you want me to, I will, but she has heard a lot about Forest View Middle School checkout policy, parent signature required for mature books, but we have not heard about Brainerd High School checkout policy. Someone is going to inquire into that policy. Brainerd High School does not have a mature reader section. Remember, we got 9th graders at the high school. No parent permission is needed at the high school. So we must assume that these children, and they are children yet, they're teens, are capable of making decisions for themselves. And I just read an article today, I just verified it, and you can believe everything on the internet. I read an article from the University of Rochester Medical Center, a research article called Understanding the Teen Brain. In part, it states, and I quote, "It doesn't matter how smart teens are or how well they score on the SAT or ACT. Good judgment isn't something they excel in, at least right now. The rational part of a teen's brain isn't fully developed and won't be until age 25 or so. In fact, recent research has found that adult and teen brains work differently. Adults think with prefrontal cortex, the brain's rational part, and this is the part of the brain that responds to situations with good judgment and an awareness of long-term consequences. Teens process information with the emotional part of their brain." End quote. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. Further discussion?
I'm not interested in limiting what kids read at high school. And this book is, target age is 13 to 17. That's the age group that this book is written for. And those kids are exposed to these kinds of things, whether they're reading them in a book or not. If they're not seeing these experiences, if they're not developing a lens, if they don't have perspectives that aren't their own, they're going to do these things and develop a perspective. Why wouldn't you want them to have access to that? I want my kids to have access to every book there is, and we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna understand it. But I'm not gonna tell you what your kids can or can't have access to in the school. I think there are kids that appreciate this genre. It's not my favorite genre, but for those that do, there are not a lot of great options. And this is a very popular series. This is a very popular author among that group.
So question. And Randy, I'm not trying to correct you, but I read the notes on the committee, Michelle, that you were on. And Director Murtha said that book had been checked out 1 or 2 times in 5 years. So it's not a very popular book. It's not affecting very many kids, I'll give you that. We don't know who looks at it in the library, because we don't keep track of that, obviously, and there's no way to do that. But, you know, whether it's 3 times or 1 or 2 times, like Director Murtha said in the notes of the meetings, it's obviously not a very popular thing. Which I go back to my point before, that for 6 months, this has been our biggest thing that we can't get along on, and that we sit and talk about all the time for a book that was checked out once or twice. It just seems to me like such a simple decision. Let's just eliminate the problem. But, I mean, I get it, that's why we were elected, just like I was talking about before. We're the backstop, so we gotta kind of stick to what we all believe, and I respect everyone's beliefs, but it hasn't been checked out very many times.
I have something to add. I wrote some notes down so I would be able to get through this with some kind of organization. When I first made the decision to run for the District 181 School Board, I firmly believed I could use my professional experience as a school social worker to ensure all learners had access to compassionate, inclusive, evidence-based educational opportunities. I wanted to continue to support initiatives and programs that encourage a positive school climate, teach positive behavioral expectations and digital citizenship, and promote students' emotional, behavioral, and academic successes. That was and currently is my why. I've become increasingly disappointed in the time, attention, and district resources that are being consumed defending access to a variety of independent choice reading materials. Across the United States, we are experiencing a wave of book challenges and banning because some parents want to shield children from people who are different than they are or protect children from certain topics. Books are tools for understanding complex issues. Limiting young people's access to books does not protect them from life's difficult and challenging issues. Young people deserve to see themselves reflected in a library book. Students deserve the chance to understand their world and everyone in it. One of the primary fundamental functions of education is to teach children how to think for themselves by building empathy, critical thinking, and decision-making skills. Removing books undermines this effort. Book bans and challenges overwhelmingly target books about race, racism, gender, and sexuality. Unfortunately, people of color and members of the LGBTQIA community are significantly impacted by book challenges, as books about them are disproportionately challenged. Books are challenged and banned under the guise of trying to protect children, but these actions can have devastating consequences. When children's literature is banned for depicting life events, it results in young people feeling excluded, shamed, and marginalized. Parents have the right to guide their children's reading, but parents should not be making decisions for other parents' children. Any restriction or removal of books from our school libraries also sabotages the right of every other parent in this school district to make a choice about what's right for their child. From the League of Women Voters website on the dangers of book banning, this quote was on there. Removing and banning books from libraries is a slippery slope to government censorship and the subsequent erosion of our country's commitment to freedom of expression. Now, we as a district need to continue to exercise due diligence to ensure students have access to age-appropriate reading materials. We'll always respect a parent's request to exclude their children from reading books and materials. However, I am not in favor of restricting access to age-appropriate choice reading materials. School educators, librarians, and media specialists are professionals who are trained to not impose their own thoughts and opinions on which ideas they believe are right, but to make knowledge and ideas available so people have the freedom to choose what to read and how to think. I put my trust in our highly trained and educated media specialists to select a wide variety of resources for our students. Lastly, I believe in the First Amendment, which allows citizens to express and be exposed to a wide range of opinions and views. The First Amendment was intended to ensure a free exchange of ideas, even if those ideas are unpopular or controversial. And I also firmly believe in intellectual freedom, the right of every individual, young or old, to both seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction.
Any further discussion? So a couple of things. One, Director Donnelly, I think you bring up a good point as it relates to the book, specifically the one book, 3 checkout instances in 5 years. But if you consider it a point of entry for any book, right? I mean, if we look at it from a content perspective, how we go with this book would determine how we go with other books that are checked out more often. I think, you know, I'm more interested in getting to the heart of content. So for my own part, I'm against this motion, primarily for two reasons. There are two reasons I'm not in favor of the appeal. The first one is that the crux of the appeal as written invokes essentially Minnesota state statute on obscenity, but only pieces of it. So I'll get to that in a second. And the second one is just the nature of subjectivity of all of these things. So Director Brecken used the term age appropriate, and if our illustrious colleague Director Ward was here tonight, I'm sure he would probably talk about that some, because he talked about it at some length very passionately a few board meetings ago. Age appropriate, that resonates with me. Age appropriate does. If this book was at Forest View, I'm not sure how I would be thinking about this appeal right now. I might have a different mindset around it. But for me, since it's at the high school, we've now discovered where one person draws his line. But my standard doesn't necessarily apply to everybody across the school district, right? So how do you grapple with the subjectivity of how we view something like age appropriate, or more to the point, something like objectionable? What's objectionable to you may not be objectionable to me. But of course, there are certain absolutes that exist out there that we all have to adhere to. I think we all would agree murder is objectionable. And if you don't, you should probably keep it to yourself. So what do we do about that? What we do about that is we have statute and we have government regulation that covers those situations. And in this particular case, we have the Minnesota state statute, which is verbatim on obscenity from Miller v. California, which is a 50-year-old landmark Supreme Court case. So this was not a Supreme Court ruling on something during an era of woke people that are off the chain. These are people in the early 70s that were determining what the definition of obscenity was in written form. And in order for something to qualify as obscenity under that thing, it had to meet three very stringent qualifications, and it had to meet all three of them in their entirety. And the first one would be that the work taken as a whole, meaning every page in that work, would have to appeal to the prurient interest in sex, which means there isn't even a pizza delivery guy. It's just nothing but basically verbal pornography, which don't get me going on the use of words too on that. We'll get into that later on subsequent challenges. So in the end, the appeal seeks to invoke a statute, a state of Minnesota statute, but unfortunately in invoking the statute, it forces me to look at the work and say, I read the work as a whole is not appealing to, I don't even have to get to the other two qualifiers. I don't even have to get that far. I can invalidate it on the first one. So that's point one. Point two goes back to that subjective nature. So since things are subjective, who am I to dictate that what I feel is objectionable to me and my family should be denied other families, to Director Spear's point, unless it meets those standards. I have those standards to fall back on, those statutes and those laws. So that's where I fall on this. I'm not in, like I said, if it was in Forest View, I would be having a much more interesting internal debate. And I actually read not only that series, I read her other series, The Court of Thorns, or whatever series it is, I can't remember. I can tell you, I do like that genre, and I find these books to be incredibly poorly written. But unfortunately, there's no statute that says, badly written books are there. So now, with that said, just because I'm voting against this does not mean that I don't respect the deeply held convictions and concerns that these community members that are bringing these challenges forth have. I totally get where they're coming from. But I fall back to the thing again where I was involved in a book challenge that really had nothing to do with sexual content almost 10 years ago now, where this was curriculum-based, so it was a little bit different, but this was another parent attempting to alter what was made available in the school system for my child to read. And I'm a big believer in you do you. And so as long as those things are subjective, in my opinion, it just comes down to, again, I think you kind of referred to it earlier, Director Dondlinger, and that's why we're elected. We're elected to vote our consciences, to listen to our constituents of all stripes, and to kind of, soul search and figure out what's important to us. And I think that everybody on the 6-person board has done that. And just because we've come to different conclusions on it makes nobody right and it makes nobody wrong. It's just a representation of what we're forced to deal with as people and as community members and as a collective society. That's just how it works. So for me, that's kind of those are my thoughts on it for tonight. So with that said, is there any further discussion?
I think we should have a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call vote. So the motion on the table by Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Heidman is to uphold the appeal of Empire of Storms and remove it from the Brainerd High School library.
Isn't upholding it agreeing with it?
Uphold the appeal?
That's the,
Yeah.
reverse it?
Well, the appeal is to reverse the committee decision.
Oh, I see.
So you could make a motion to
I
reverse
see.
the committee decision.
Yep, I was thinking.
Semantics to a certain extent.
Yep.
All right, so we'll do a roll call vote on the motion, please, Janet?
DJ Donlinger,
Yes.
Randy Heidman,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
No.
Kevin Boyles,
No.
Michelle Brecken,
No.
vote of 3-2.
Do we have an alternate motion?
Do we need one?
I guess we don't. If the appeal is not upheld, then it just dies, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think we need another.
I think you're correct. Actually, I should probably read my Robert's Rules of Order. Yeah, actually, I believe that's correct. I don't think we have to vote to uphold it because the committee decision stands by lack of support for the appeal. Yep.
And we just have to supply a written.
Right, so, well, technically, under 606, we don't, that's not prescribed in there, but in the interest of trying to keep with the spirit of what we're trying to do with 631, I would be very comfortable with essentially directing the administration to follow the 631 language and supply a report on the
So a
board's
report would
decision.
just be the.
Or the
board's
notification
decision.
in the board's.
Notification.
Okay. All right, we'll move on then to committee meeting updates. Let's go to long-range planning and community relations with Director Dondelinger.
Can I just do both of mine at the same
Yeah,
time?
absolutely, go nuts.
So in long-range planning, we were going over, we met a couple weeks ago, and we went through a lot of the school district's land and their best uses for it and our future needs, and nothing big to report there. And the finance committee was pretty much consumed by Marcy's proposal tonight. And there was a CARES audit, and so that turned out well. And there you go. I don't think there's much else to report.
Okay, thank you. And then next up, Director Brecken with the Equity Task Force update.
I think I should probably report on student support services.
Oh, that's sorry, sorry,
first.
yep.
Okay, so we met on Wednesday, November 29th. A couple of highlights, we have nursing staff in all the buildings. We had representatives in the state tournament in girls tennis, girls cross country, boys cross country, girls swimming and diving. There was a fall musical. There, for the first time, we'll be hosting the site for a robotics competition in February, and there's a choir tour to Ireland, March 8th through 15th. We talked about the policy updates for school weapons, hazing, and search of lockers. There's also some criteria being developed for adding activities and team levels. So if people wanted to bring forth adding an additional activity, there's some criteria that they would need to follow. And I think that pretty much sums it up.
That's great. Thank you very much, Director Brecken. Then we'll move on to informational with the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation update from Director Spear.
We had the bingo event last Monday, and it was well attended. I think we sold out, and so preliminary numbers are around $8,000 raised through that event to support the mission of the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation. Some of that money will go to the school food pantries at the elementary and some at the middle school and high school as well. So I'm just going to keep saying February 3rd, big event. If you haven't got your tickets, they're going to go fast.
Gotta remember to do that.
And that's it.
Thank you, Director Spear. Oh, now the Equity
Okay,
Task Force
so-
update, Director Brecken.
During our board working session on the 29th of November, Aaron Karlgaard came to give us some information about some of the work that's been done by this committee. There was some findings from surveys, focus groups, and meetings during the 21-22 school year regarding student safety and engagement. Students belonging to marginalized groups feel less safe at school than other students. Marginalized students report bullying based on their identity. And all student report safety concerns in less structured supervised places. All students reported safety concerns in less supervised places, like hallways, cafeteria, bathrooms, and buses. Some of the recommendations were to review the bullying harassment policies, consider interrupter training, which the district participated in. Now it's just figuring out how to take that to the next level, and to explore the adoption and implementation of school-wide restorative practices. When she talked about social, emotional, and behavioral interventions, a significant population of our students have experienced one or more ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. A significant number of our students have mental health concerns, and students of color and students with disabilities are disproportionately represented in discipline practices. So recommendations is ongoing mental health support and professional development for staff, trauma-informed practices, professional development around differentiation to best meet student needs, and district-wide restorative practices. Our community is currently in the initial stages of assessing how the school district is involving parents, community members, and students in meaningful ways. And that data will help us determine how we can best strengthen those community partnerships.
Thank you. I mean, I've been on the Equity Task Force for almost 2 years, and seeing her report consolidated the way that it was really, it helped me, because you're kind of in it and you don't, to see it distilled and condensed down like that was really interesting, and I think it dovetailed nice with Director Ward's concerns about student safety and mental health stuff, plus the strategic plan, which we obviously didn't talk about much tonight, but that all figures prominently in there too. Thank you, Michelle.
Question.
Director Hyde?
Heidi, have we done anything? I thought I heard something. We had applied for a grant, and maybe I'm just dreaming this up. We applied for a grant to put cameras outside the bathrooms, so that if there was some stuff that was going on, obviously we can't have cameras in the bathrooms, but.
No, and actually with our upgraded facilities, so we have upgraded cameras throughout our entire school district.
Okay.
Through the Blueprint 181. So we have, I mean, you're right, they're not, we have hallway cameras, which would be able to view entrance and exit of restrooms or hallways.
Okay, so that,
Parking lots.
they're there.
They're there.
Okay.
What grant we did receive, it was a pretty substantial grant, was about alternative disciplinary practices, which has been used for some of the restorative practice training, restorative circles.
And then just one general question: why do we have so much mental health problems? I mean, we talk about what we're doing to help kids, but I never hear us talk about the cause. I'm not an expert, that's for sure. Do we ever talk about? I mean, do we have experts in our community that can tell us
We have
why?
why. I mean, that's the why is I would think very significant. We know
Yeah.
post-pandemic, a lot of kids lived in isolation. And then you talk about being isolated, what it does for depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
Talk about a lot of cyberbullying and cyber attacks. A lot of that could happen when we were so isolated. So you're seeing that ripple effect play out. I think demands on our students are greater than they've ever been before when you talk about rigor and standards and the expectations to perform high. So there's a myriad, I think a multi-layered reasoning behind all of that. We've had mental health supports in our building. I mean, that's how I started 28 years ago. So Brainerd's had mental health in buildings for over 30 years. And it's still not enough access. I think if you talk to the community or people waiting to get into mental health services, there's a significant wait that hasn't happened before. So it's a compounding impact that plays back into the school.
Okay.
There's a lot of talk, and I've been reading a lot of articles about it, that education, instead of sticking to the basics, is kind of branched out so drastically that kids get confused. and they kind of feel defeated and overwhelmed. You know, though, for example, when my daughter was in 5th grade, I was driving her to basketball practice. I was the coach over at Lowell. My wife signed me up because I missed the meeting. But anyways, you know what she told me? Icebergs and polar bears are dying. I go, really? Polar bears are dying? And she goes, yeah, because the Earth's warming up. And you know, Dad, I hate to tell you, but cars are doing it. She's ready to crawl under the seat. She's petrified to tell me this, right? What? What's going on? That movie said that Miami was going to be underwater by now. Is Miami underwater? The ice cap's shrinking, but Antarctica has grown more than we've ever seen in history. So all this stuff that keeps happening. I had a gentleman send me an email today. We'll leave him unnamed. This is a message I received from my 11th grade son today after the assembly they had about climate change. A video was played, sorry to the next generation. So are we trying to make them feel guilty for the next generation? Well, there's a lot of stuff that's creeping. It's not like running in. It doesn't happen overnight. It's creeping into our education. I'm not saying it's even our administration's fault. Look at the state, how they're over regulating all the schools. Like, it just keeps creeping and creeping and creeping. And I've been reading a lot of articles that a lot of kids, you know, they feel guilty, they're embarrassed, whether it's their race, their gender, whatever you want to call it. All these things are kind of overwhelming them at such a young age. For some of these decisions should be put off, then you take the phones. I think I told you this, Heidi. I used to, when I got off that bus, everybody was my pal. We played kickball, we played football, we went sliding, riding our bikes, doing whatever in the neighborhood. It was all my pals. When I got on that bus, I was pretty much on defense because of my last name, right? At least it was over when I got home. And then when summer would come around, I didn't live in town, so I wouldn't see any of my buddies hardly at all the whole summer. I had like a whole different set of friends because I wasn't getting a ride to town except to go to work. And my point to this is it was over. So all the harassment and bullying and all the crap I had to go through was done for the whole summer. I remember that this 6th grader was gonna pound me and I was in the 5th grade and he was gonna win, let me tell you. And I mean, I couldn't even sleep the night before the first day of school because I knew I was gonna get her. And it was tough, but today's world, this phone's been beeping at me this whole meeting. It never stops. So you've been getting picked on all day because no one likes your jeans or your new haircut or whatever it is, or because Randy can jump higher than I am and can throw a ball harder than I can. And I'm just getting ridden and ridden and ridden and ridden. And these poor kids, Randy, they never get away from it. It's 10:30 at night and someone else is giving them another jab and it's another jab and it's another jab. It's just kind of ridiculous. Look what people put on all this social media. I mean, I just don't play on social media personally, but it's like, this is a picture of my dinner. This is a picture of the beach that I'm on. How's the day going for you, sucker? You know, look at me, how awesome I am. You know, it's like, it's just crazy, isn't it? I mean, I just don't understand, but it's pretty easy to understand why a teenager or even younger, I'm sure you guys are the experts on this stuff, could be messed up and feeling confused and guilted and 100 different deals, you know, parents and brothers, and it just doesn't end. I mean, I don't know if you remember it, but as old as you are, Randy, I don't know, maybe it wasn't like that back then, but anyways, you know, in middle school, junior high is what they used to call it, it was tough. I mean, your feet are too big, you're clumsy, and all these changes in your body, it's just weird, you know? It was like confusing to us then. Think if you had all this social stuff going on and all this other stuff to go with it. It's just gotta be overwhelming. And then throw COVID in there, like Heidi said, and isolate them for a couple of years. I mean, it's just, wow. It's a tough deal. And they feel it's a tough deal for our teachers, it's a tough deal for the administrators, it's a tough deal for the kids, probably the parents. I mean, it's a challenge. And I don't think it's getting much easier. Maybe, hopefully, we can make some policies that'll help clean some of it up and make it a little easier for our staff and easier for the kids too, because the kids are the real deal, you know? So, I mean, like you said, I'm not an expert on mental health either. But I've been reading a lot of articles that all these things are combining on these kids and they're just feeling overwhelmed. And it's kind of sad.
Well, and I think the Equity Task Force is doing a great job of understanding our local situation through a lot of the information they've gathered here locally to understand how to respond to that. So I'm really proud of that work.
Marcy. Marcy Lord joining us for the Business Services Report.
All right, in your packet, sorry, on your agenda, the financial report, the only thing I was gonna note is OPEB expenses are tracking higher than last year, but we'll review it in the budget revision, so. And then the enrollment report, we are down 12 from the beginning of the year. The 5-year averages, normally we're down 39, so that's good. Any questions?
I have one question.
Absolutely.
How did we pick up 30 students last month? I mean, we're going up every single month.
Where are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at student count, those ADMs.
The first, nope, this is,
This is actual.
Noses.
it knows this.
So you look at September, we're at 58, 98, then we pick up 10. And then the next month, I guess the next month we went down 17.
Right,
I'm looking at the EC through 12. So are we picking up little kids? Is that what the deal is?
yeah, so that very first row, that will grow throughout the year. The problem is we only get about a third of their time for ADMs. So when you see let's just say 300, we get, you know.
0.3.
Right.
Gotcha.
Any further questions for Marcy? All right, consider yourself released into the wild.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mars. Oh, man, I closed out the thing again.
A superintendent's report from Dr. Hahn.
I just have a couple of things. One, I think it was very nice tonight to see educators with us. What was impressive is I don't know if people took the time to read what building they were from, but how many years of experience our teachers had. But I think that would all be over 1,000 years of experience very easily just going down the one row of staff that I looked at and talked with. In my opinion, we have some of the best educators in the state working with our kids, and they're working their tails off, and I'm very grateful for them. I think a good testament of that tonight was listening to Nicole Harmer and Madeline Anderson as they talked about the work they're doing on science standards and the challenging work. And then you look at 350 plus districts in the entire state, and we have 1 of 30 of the licensed staff in that content area. So that's an exemplar. And I think sometimes in these meetings, like you said, we're spending all this time on books, and what I was impressed with tonight is all the educators invited us into their classrooms to show us what they're doing. So I hope you take advantage of that. So speaking of quality years of experience and how we come here and we stay here, unfortunately, somebody who's been here for quite a while is leaving. And so Janet Horn made a little noise in the corner this evening, whatever computer. Janet has finally decided to retire, so we had a wonderful celebration of Janet a couple weeks ago. But her last day with us is gonna be Friday. And so, actually, this is Anne Marie and her staff, so at Janet's retirement party, we rewrote the words to It's a Wonderful World. So as a commemorative and thank you, those words have now been framed with a lovely, so we just want to thank, and if you can help me thank Janet for all of her years of service. Funny today, she's like, do you want me at the board meeting? And I looked at Kelly, who's gonna be taking the new role, and Kelly's like, so I'm like, yes. But she's been very good to me and to the entire district, so thank you for your years of service, and congrats on going someplace warmer. But that's all I have for tonight's superintendent report.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to director updates. Director Brecken?
I don't have anything more to add.
Director Heidman?
Nothing.
Director Dundelinger?
Nothing. How you like that?
It's okay.
I'm on a roll.
Director Spear?
I'm good, thank you.
Might as well keep a good thing going. Other than to say, I think we'll address this again in a future board retreat. I think we've tried these updates for a couple of meetings, so I'd like to reopen the dialogue around whether we want to keep this as a standing agenda item or not in the future. That said, I'll let it go. Future meetings, y'all can read those on December 11th. Today we did the Finance Committee meeting. I stood in for Director Ward with Director Donalinger tonight's meeting. And then we're closed December 22nd through December 25th. And again, through the 29th and January 1st. School resumes on January 3rd. And then January 8th, we will kick off a new year of funness with our organizational meeting on the board, regular school board meeting to follow that. And then we have the January MSBA conferences down in Minneapolis that we'll be at between January 10th and 12th. And finally, next regularly scheduled board meeting on February 12th, right here. So why don't we take,
I do have one thing.
okay,
Is it okay?
yes,
Director Ward is doing okay. Been there, done that. It's kind of interesting to hear that he's gonna get the 3 wires pulled out of his belly. That was a treat. Because you're awake when, when they get pulled out. When they get put in, you're wow land. But he seems to be doing really well. And
he's watching, so you know, he's been,
Yep, no, and
he's been actively participating in the meeting as much as law allows him to tonight. So if you can hear us, John, Godspeed, get better soon.
just to continue with your recovery and
Good, thank you,
and
Director.
whatnot. So I thought I'd
That's great. All right, so we do not have to adjourn this one to go into close, right? We need a motion to adjourn. I don't think it's on the list here, right? Oh, motion to go into closed session and then to come back out. Okay, so let's,
I'll make the motion.
okay, so we'll make a motion to go recess to go into closed session.
Yes, sir.
And we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back at,
You need a
second.
9 PM.
yeah, we'll come back at 9, let's just say 9:02.
That's that late already? Wow, okay.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
All right, all in favor, I'm sorry, we have a motion from Director Donalinger.
seconded by Director Heidman.
Second from Director Heidman. Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are recessed to come back in closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D03 for labor negotiations